jag det slutar och sådana någonting så är det så
Genunsere etniao in honjagi, jonanito negarjagi, dagyo nego ni saradi, yata nim saragi ungunadro kne ondi, don negoriosto, nejon wari wanero, jitaligari stonis nearani wana oxeron, ego ese saw negaya nesser negasat stonsera, always onsera, Jenyahoen, awam. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So we have an agenda before you. I'll just review the agenda, then we'll have a motion to adopt the agenda. So we have the minutes of June the 28th and July the 5th. We have, I think there's already a motion for myself to attend Iroquois Cox. We'd like to know if there's anyone else going to Ganawagi on the 9th and 10th. Chris will be asked for another deferral of the ferry boat launch committee because they've been unavailable to meet because they're apparently fishing. There's a briefing note here on the increasing the number of counselors. It seems to be favorable to increasing to the number. There's an AI letter of agreement that needs authorization. There are two legal invoices from Allen Pratt and JFK Law. There's a recreation facility feasibility report, a North Street update on the development there. The Rapid Housing Initiative Round 3 funding will be discussed. The MBQ Elder Home final budget and tender needs a motion. The upcoming meeting is July the 19th at 3 p.m. as the local business meeting. On July the 19th, 4 p.m. there will be a Yawadi board meeting at 4 o'clock. July the 26th at 7 p.m. the local council meeting. August the 2nd, 9 is the regular council. August the 9th is the local council business at 7 p.m. August 16th at 9:30 p.m. is the regular council meeting. August the 23rd at 7 p.m. is the local council meeting. Then there's a private agenda as well. Could we have a motion to accept the agenda?
Do you have my add-ons there, Chief?
Oh, sorry, there's some add-ons?
Yeah.
Also, just to make note, Chief, the RHI has been moved in private, so that won't be discussed in public.
Private? All right. So we'll pass these out. These add-ons, I'll take these. Here, hand these over.
One of them's in camera there, Chief.
Okay. Here, this is a copy of all this, is it, Pansy? All three issues? Okay, thank you. So we'll note those add-ons then. One is critical incident report, previous tabletop exercises. One is an HR matter that was deferred. And then the election date and candidate forum dates. So can we have a motion to adopt the agenda with the add-ons that you've been just given?
Can we just name the add-ons in terms of numbering them? So will the
Sure.
copy of critical incident report, will that be number 13? Will the election date and candidate forum dates be 14? And I'm assuming that the other item is actually a private agenda item.
Well, so then number 13 will be the critical incident report. And Chris, you're going to speak to that?
Yes.
And the election date? And then there's a staff evaluation issue that'll be in private.
Yes. Chief, I will see Bryce. My computer's not opening up. I'm right back.
Okay. We'll just wait till the computer is functioning for the counselor.
Well, do you want me to print these? I just saw your email.
What is it?
You asked me to print 7 copies for tea.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, so make sure you note that as
Okay,
well.
yeah, okay, so the number 15 is a draft letter to the Prince Edward County concerning Picton terminals. I sent the email around to follow up to that issue this morning.
I wonder if perhaps we just take a break and we pause for now until Chris has his computer issue
Okay,
addressed.
Could we have a motion to, with that additional add-on from a letter to Prince, a draft letter to Prince Edward County concerning Picton terminals, add it to the agenda?
I'll move, Chief.
Moved by Chris to adopt the agenda. Is there a seconder for that motion?
I'll second.
Ted? We'll have the June 28th minutes. So present were, the meeting was held on June the 28th at 7:30 in the council chambers. It was a local business meeting. Oh no, we'll do the public minutes first. It was held at 9:30 a.m. in the council chambers. I was present. Josh was present. Stacia, Carl, Ted, and Chris were present. David Soulier was on Teams. Angela was present. And Shelley Bowden, the secretary, was present. And the meeting was opened with the Hodung Gariwa Tego and the Lord's Prayer in English and Mohawk. There was a motion made to adopt the agenda with add-ons. There was a motion to accept the July 16th minutes as corrected. The minutes of June the 22nd minutes were approved, accepted as corrected. It was noted that Chief Miracle would attend the Iroquois Caucus meeting in Kahnawake on August the 9th and 10th, and Councillors Josh and Stacia tentatively confirmed their attendance. It was moved to approve my travel to the Chiefs of the AFN meeting in Halifax, and also to the AFN Housing and Infrastructure Committee on July should read the 10th to the 11th, because the Housing Infrastructure meeting was July the 10th. So we can note that, please. The business registrations for Susie Lynn's Boutique was approved. There was a request to delegate authorization to for business registration renewals to MBQ staff, and MBQ will develop a delegated authority document and revise policies to authorize MBQ staff to renew business registrations as recommended by the business development worker. There was a motion to approve the business registration for Nation to Nation. There was a motion to approve the business registration for the renewal of Gas Depot. There was a motion to defer the ferry boat launch committee update to the next council meeting. It was noted that there was a motion to accept the annual report to the membership. It was noted that the digital copy will be available on the MBQ website, and hard copies will be prepared for committee members upon request. There was a mandate that the production of an annual report for committee members receive regular updates. It's carried. There was a motion to hold a committee meeting on Monday, July the 31st at 7 p.m. It was carried. There was a motion to reschedule Surrender 41 meeting to July 19th, TMC regular meeting. There was a motion to approve a one-time donation of $5,000 for the Powwow Committee. There was a motion to approve invoice 39900 from OKT Law Firm in the amount of $13,020. There was a motion to approve and sign the Indigenous Services Agreement Amendment 41. It was carried. There was a motion to meet on August the 2nd at 9 o'clock to adjust for a visit from Minister Calendra, and that will take place at 11 a.m. It was noted that the August 16th meeting start time will be 9:30. There was a motion to have revisions to the MBQ mortgage approval letter for the next TMC meeting, and then there was a motion to go in private. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as provided, or are there corrections or additions?
Just a correction, Chief, and you were relaying the motions. Motion number 14 for OKT, the amount was 1,320, not 13,000. So I think that
Okay,
might have just misspoke. So
yeah,
just so
13, my,
folks who are listening knows that it's not 13,000, but $1,320.
okay, $1,320 noted.
I made just a minor correction. It's nothing, I would say, substantive. In terms of motion number 18 to go into private, normally we put the time on there. I don't see the time indicated. So if we
You-
could add that, if we know the
Okay.
time that we would.
I guess we're going to have to guess what time it was.
I might have it, Chief. I'll look in my notes here.
Do you have it?
We can add it in, but I think I have it in my notes, so.
I'll just note here to be added in.
Oops.
Okay, motion to accept the minutes as corrected. And Shelley, if you could put in that the housing infrastructure meeting for on motion 4, that meeting was on July the 10th. Okay.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, is there a motion to accept these minutes as corrected? If so, can I have a mover and seconder?
You had the adjourned time. It was 12:50 PM.
12:50?
Yep. July 5th, right?
Yep.
Yes.
12:50 p.m. is the time that we went into private for the July, on
No.
July 5th.
I thought you, oh, sorry, into private. Sorry, that's the adjourned time.
No.
I'm sorry. I think I missed the time.
What time
went
did we
into
go in private is what the question is. Okay.
Yeah, I think I missed that one.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as corrected?
I can move.
It's moved by Councillor Stacia. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Ted? Motion is carried. We'll have the minutes of June, shall I put June 28th? So present on June the 28th were myself, Councillors Stacia, Ted, and Chris. Josh sent his regrets. Present were David, the the CAO, Angela, the Senior Director of Operations, and Shelley, the Recording Secretary to the Council. MZ was on vacation. The Council discussed business registration for gas stations, and Councillor Chris asked if the owners needed to provide proof of insurance when registering the business. A motion was made to approve the business registration for the Smoke Depot, owner John Akey, and that has been signed and given and sent. Council reviewed the DMAP application for servicing the remaining unserviced roads, 54 kilometers, by the way. Community infrastructure needs a council resolution. A resolution was passed that to deal with the annual droughts, and 5 occurred in the last 7 years. The 2018 Climate Change Adaptation Plan recommended maximizing the capacity of the MBQ centralized water treatment plant and extend water distribution mains to increase access to dependable water supply throughout the community. There are approximately 24 kilometers of unserviced roads remaining upon completion of phases 1 to 4, and this will be under the Disaster Mitigation Fund. We will also be asking, by the way, Indigenous Services Canada for a contribution because if DMAP doesn't cover it all. And so therefore be resolved that the Mohawk Council agrees to submit an application in the amount of $56,430,000, $56,430,000 to the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund to extend the water main distribution servicing to the remaining homes vulnerable to drought conditions as a result of climate change. And it was moved by Chris and seconded by Stacia. This meeting going in private at 9:10 p.m. And that motion was carried. Is there a motion to accept these minutes as provided, or are there corrections or additions?
I've noted my corrections. I believe they are on your printed copy. They should be in red.
Yes, I have. That's the note after motion 5. It says requires a council motion instead of needs.
And just above that,
And Councillor,
that's correct.
Councillor Chris. There's 2 corrections. Are there any additions or other additions or corrections? If not, can I have a mover to accept these minutes then as corrected?
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Ted. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I can second.
Stacia, anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Is there any business arising from those minutes of June the 28th or July the 5th? Chris,
Sorry?
do you have any business arising from the minutes?
I don't think so.
Ted, do you? Josh? Stacia?
No.
Okay, none?
I was gonna say, I have one thing, Chief. I'm gonna be forwarding around the draft wording that you guys asked for at the last meeting for the BMO thing. I just didn't get a chance to get it all done, so I'm gonna send that shortly, so you'll be able to look at that hopefully sometime today, so we can process those mortgages.
Okay, does that need to be an add-on to the agenda?
I guess. It was in your minutes to bring it back, or try to do it sooner, which it was my fault.
So
that I
then
didn't
that
get
will be
done
number
sooner.
16, BMO, and what is it, Angela?
Council requests an addition to a letter that's part of the BMO mortgage process.
Okay, well, that will just be a follow-up then to the Director
Yes.
of Council, okay. Okay, meetings outside of the territory. There is a motion for my attendance at the Iroquois Caucus, Shelley. Josh, are you going to go? Are you going to attend, Stacia?
No, I'm not going to.
So then we'll need a motion for Josh to attend the Iroquois Caucus. Let's get that so it gets in the minutes. Josh is going to attend. Are you going to attend, Chris?
I don't think so, Chief.
Are you going to attend, Chris? Could we have a motion then for Josh to attend the Iroquois Caucus meeting on the 9th and 10th of August in Ganawagi? Who will
I'll
move?
move. I'll move.
Moved by Ted. Who will second it?
I can second.
Stacia? The motion is carried. So that would be business arising from the minutes. Then, Andrew, do you want to go and ahead and get your revision to the letter then and present
Yeah, I'm
that?
just looking at it one last time before I send it to you. You might as well go on, no? Go on with the other stuff because you have a meeting at 10, so.
Okay, the Ferry Lane Committee update is, Chris has asked us to be deferred. Can we have a motion to defer it until when, Chris?
Until I can get them all together.
Would this be deferred to the next council then?
Shit.
Can we have a motion, please?
And that would be August 2nd?
Yeah. Who will move?
I will, Chief.
Chris, who will second it? Josh? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion's carried. And just note that the unavailability of the committee to meet is the reason. Increase the number of counselors. There seems to be a plurality from the survey to increase the number of counselors. One person expressed some concern. And there seems to be a criticism about not answering calls or difficult to get in contact. But anyway, that's pretty much, but there seems to be, everybody else seemed to be in favor of increasing. So does council wish to proceed? If so, we would require a council resolution, or do you want to leave it till after the public meeting on July 31st? Do you want to defer it, or are you ready to proceed with a resolution of council?
What's your thoughts on it, Chief?
Well, as long as the councillors are available to meet when required, I have no objection to it. I think spreading out the portfolio might provide more time for the councillors to devote to their portfolios. I guess we'll just have to try it out and see how it works. Some of the communities that do have large councils find it difficult to get common dates to have meetings. I've heard that expressed by some of the chiefs, but
You mean large, like 12?
as large as 12,
Yeah.
but the more you have, then the more schedules you have to adjust to be able to conduct business. So that's the issue.
Yeah, I think that's true for definitely some. I think there are others, though. If we're looking at larger Haudenosaunee communities who may have 12 counselors, those are their jobs full-time. Those are their full-time roles. And so, you may see that in some instances where it isn't, where there's a large number of counselors, but in other communities, they may not have that difficulty trying to find dates to meet because it's part of their role.
So I'm not opposed. I'm good either way with whatever with what the decision is.
And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, Chief, on the number. So we know a community the size of ours. I mean, we have the potential to have up to 12. I know the question that was raised in this survey was increasing to 6, and we didn't explore other options beyond that. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, just in terms of,
I would support
size and complement.
Well, I would like to see, first of all, a budget review done to ensure that we can afford that. I can support 6 for now and see how it works, and then if then maybe review it again later on. The surveys that I have seen didn't seem to indicate a lot of interest in having more than 6, and of course, but those surveys were done a number of years ago. And I think we'd have to put the whole question to the community again. We've decided to do that in this case, and so we should continue along that line. I can support, though, increasing the number to 6 at this time, and acting on the survey. It's been outstanding for a while, and just based on previous surveys, that there was a general interest in going to 6. So that I don't know if that still is the community mindset or whether they believe there should be 12 or 10, but there was not a lot of interest in having 12. I can tell you that in the previous surveys.
Well, I think there's a general interest in increasing the number. So
Yeah.
that I think is true. I think the number is kind of difficult to pinpoint because we haven't been able to actually ascertain that. But I mean, I think moving incrementally are some of the comments that at least that I've read from the feedback that we have received. So I'm in favor. I'm in support of increasing the number of counselors. Absolutely.
So I guess what does council, since the survey was asked about 6, and I understand that, David, that the staff have determined that we do have budget for 6, or Angela? Has the financial part of it been examined?
Yes, Chief, we would be able way to accommodate that. Your cross section, based on the responses, I mean, it's only 30 community members, and when you did poll it several years ago, during the election, I forget what year it was, the majority again felt that at that time that 6 was agreeable. There was more people that were in favor of 6 than not. So I'm hoping that you guys are willing to make a decision on this today. I would recommend 6. I think NDQ is big enough that would benefit from having 6 members of council, personally.
Okay, thank you, David. So is there a motion then for 6, or do you want to wait till after you have your general meeting to see if there's other opinions?
I can make a motion for 6.
Okay, moved
I
by-
think it's been
it's
well
been
over
outstanding for a long time.
outstanding, and I think what was stalling us from moving forward was we were trying to figure out the term, you know, how long should the terms be, and then it turned into
Those are 2 separate issues, though.
Yeah.
well, that's what I mean. We were kicking all that around, trying to make it just one issue, like one big bite. But it's complicated because I'm hoping we make this 6, then the next council will look into how we can adjust the terms and the governance that surrounds this table as well.
Okay.
And that's either going to be through a custom or First Nation Election Act as well, right? I think there's those 2 choices.
Okay, it's
To
been
get
moved
away.
by Ted to increase the number to 6.
But I'd also like to say though, in here, and there is a gap, and I think we all realize that this gap, and there was a comment here about the longhouse, how we govern, and I think I always tried over the years to figure out how we can build that bridge, and that gap still exists, and it'd be nice to maybe the next council try and figure out how to build that bridge so that we can get more participation and work together in that, because we only get a few people that actually vote,
Yeah, okay.
so.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that Ted raised in terms of the comments. You know, we really do need to look at our composition. We need to look at how it is that we're engaging with all members of the community, and there is that piece missing with our engagement with the traditional community and what that can look like in the future. So I think that's really important. You know, I think, you know, I know there's a motion on the floor, but I'd really like to hear from the other councillors just to see what their thoughts are, because I think this is a really important discussion.
Absolutely.
So I'd really like to hear.
If we could sort of deal with the resolution, that's the business is increasing, then we'll do that after. We'll get that out of the way. So is there a seconder for Ted's motion?
I just wanted to speak what the station
Okay.
suggested, because I do agree with enhancing the composition, but at the same time, Ted raises issues about being more inclusive. We're only a week and a half from a community meeting. It seems inappropriate, I think, to have pass this motion now, and then 2 weeks from now, meet with community and say, oh, by the way, you know, let's get their input.
Well, with the survey,
So I'm
once
going to suggest that we
yeah.
defer it until after, add it to the July 31st,
Okay,
but defer it until we hear from community. Otherwise, it just, don't know.
okay, all right,
Well, excuse me, Chief.
go ahead.
One thing is we have heard from community because we hired a consultant to do this a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, and
But-
that was the consultant gathered all the information from the community
We've
and it
had
just came back
surveys, we've had surveys
more than
but
once. Yeah.
at the time of the election, which I would recommend not to do that again, because when that happened, some people thought they should vote for 6 councillors that time and there were a lot of spoiled ballots, so we don't
Yeah.
confuse the 2.
Yeah.
But there have been surveys, but they have the information and feedback from the community was never acted on by the council.
Because we were trying to
been-
figure out how to change the term and all that stuff
But
at
you
the
can't,
same time, but we
they're
can't
2
do it that
separate
easy.
issues, like,
Yeah.
you know, the composition of council, the number of seats is all we're dealing with at this table. How we should govern ourselves, the participation of the Longhouse, you know, do we adopt an election act? All of those, that's a separate discussion.
Absolutely.
This is just the number of seats on council.
okay, I can second the motion, Chief. Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
I was going to say, in respect to the motion and in respect to the comments, I kind of share the same line of thinking, where the initiative was put forth to gauge, to gather feedback. And I do see not next week, the week after's meeting as a potential additional engagement to hear feedback on this and other things. I don't see an issue. I don't believe it is time sensitive, but I don't believe it's time sensitive to the point where it must be passed this meeting. So I would be cool with having this place on our agenda after the next meeting, the community meeting, just because, again, I know we set June for the survey and for comments and for input and feedback. Since we made that decision, we've also scheduled a meeting to take place this month. So I don't see any harm in it. I think it would
And
only.
delaying it.
I don't like that word, Chief, but I don't like delay. But I think enhancing our decision, making it
Okay.
more sound. So and that's in respect to both, both at this as it stands right now. I am in support of going to 6 councillors, but perhaps there's something that
Okay.
haven't heard to factor into my decision yet.
So in light of the discussion today, would the mover and second be willing then to defer it till after the July 31st meeting?
Yeah, the only reason I wanted to move forward with this because Chris also put on our agenda about picking a date and all that stuff for our election. And we can't even pick an electoral officer until we make this decision, right?
You can.
Oh, we can? I thought
Yeah.
we can't until we
No.
decide if it's 4
No.
or 6. Okay. No, then I have no problem.
Okay, so anyway, so I guess then is a motion then to defer this then till after next council?
Yeah, I don't have no problem.
That'd be mine. I don't see any harm in
I
it.
thought it was more time sensitive.
Yeah,
but
I
guess
don't
it's
see any
not.
harm in it.
So Ted, are you willing to make change your motion to defer till after next council? And Chris, are you willing to second that motion to defer? Chris?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
To August 2nd.
August 2nd.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, that then motion will read to defer till after August 2nd. And you'll have an opportunity to hear what the community has to say. But you may not always have consensus, and so sometimes you have to make a decision.
No, I
based
think
on
it's
consensus.
important to have the opportunity. Again,
Yeah.
you open it up for comment. People have an opportunity to provide it. They don't have to. They're not obligated to, but given the opportunity to.
The AIA letter of agreement. This is to receive $56,250 to support the implementation of an AIA mental wellness crisis team. Funds will be used to support the creation of new positions or support existing positions to conduct mental wellness activities at the community level and participate in the AIA mental wellness team model support and support other related expenditures related to the position for travel, program materials, training, and supplies. In addition, these activities, and by accepting the funds for this initiative, each AI community will provide the name and contact information to be forwarded to AI for mental wellness crisis team, who can be utilized as a resource to support AI communities when required. All additional costs to support this initiative outside the allocation of $56,000 will be the responsibility of the nation. Funds are to be spent by March 31st. Is there a motion to approve and sign?
I'll move.
Is there a second for Ted's motion?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chief.
Ted and Josh, is anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. There's two invoices here.
Sorry,
for-
Chief. Just going back to the motion. So there are a number of schedules. I think you've only read the first schedule for 56,000. I didn't hear the others. So I heard the mental wellness crisis response team funding for 56,250. But there are a number of other schedules. There's Schedule B, C, D, E,
Yeah,
F
okay.
for health emergency management, responsible gambling, colonizing agenda
Yeah.
funding.
Yeah, there is.
So I just don't know if you wanted to
No,
maybe
no, no,
amend
we
your
can- we
motion
can.
to include an
We-
omnibus, so you just include them all and Schedule A, B, C, D.
Yeah, that can be in
yeah.
there. This is part of the reporting requirements.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's
Can do
fine.
that.
I don't know if you wanted to read out the other amounts, just for the.
Yeah, okay, so schedule,
Summarized on the
schedule B.
agenda sheet.
Schedule B is the association will provide a one-time payment to each AI community. Each AI nation member will receive $11,143 in order to build internal capacity to address a health emergency reflective of community need. Training to meet community need in the area of health emergency planning, capacity to create and amend, test community emergency plans, increase capacity for the community mental wellness team, address community health emergency needs. Monies are to be spent by March 31st, 2024. Schedule A is to provide 56,250, which I already read. Schedule C is dealing with the Ministry of Health. The schedule outlines the terms and reporting requirements for the AI communities to transfer of 2023-24 funding to support the provision of prevention awareness initiatives to promote responsible gambling in AI First Nations. The association will provide about $17,000 to support initiatives to increase awareness of the risks associated with gambling, increase the awareness of treatment services available and how to access treatment of problem gambling, provision of gambling prevention programs that are culturally, age, and gender appropriate, decrease community stigma associated with problem gambling. Work plan is due on May 30th. The payment upon signed letter of agreement, May 30th. First quarter and financial report is due on July the 15th. The second quarter activity, October 15th. The third quarter activity report, January the 15th. And year-end activity and financial reports are due on April 15th. Schedule D. It outlines the reporting and requirements for AI to transfer one-time funding to support the implementation of decolonizing gender, two-spirited LGBTQ plus supports. The Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians will provide one-time funding in the amount of $28,111 to enhance the support of Two-Spirit and LGBTQ1 INAPM services and support community coordinated salaries, counselor salaries, focus groups, and program planning, sharing circles, cultural events, social activities, and community programming, elder and knowledge keepers support, community information sessions. Funds are to be spent March 31st. And reports are to be submitted to Susan Nicholas, the Health and Wellness Manager, by April 15th. Schedule E is Indigenous Victim Services, $30,000. Human trafficking, $11,883. This is from the Ministry of Attorney General. The purpose of the MEG Indigenous Victim Services funding, $30,000 is to provide funding to the shelter and healing lodges to provide supports to clients to heal from traumatic effects of exposure to violence and help prevent cycle of violence against women and children. The purpose of the MEG human trafficking funding, $11,883, is to support capacity building of the shelter and healing lodges in the development of sources and tools and training that will enhance frontline workers' ability to provide culturally relevant services to address Ontario's anti-human trafficking strategy. Funds are to be spent by March 31st. There's to be a work plan on May 30th. Payment and receipt of the signed letter of agreement May 30th. Mid-year activity and financial reports October 15th. Year-end activity April 15th. Schedule F. Indigenous Services Ministry of the Attorney General. The purpose of the MEG Indigenous Victim Services funding, $45,000, is to provide culturally relevant and responsive trauma-informed supports and services for Indigenous victims. Examples and supports include but not limited to support for individuals who require specialized services, including IRS survivor, male survivor of domestic violence, and survivors of human trafficking, tailored support for mental health and addictions, honorary for elder and knowledge keepers, development of care packages for community members. And it's basically the same work plan and the reporting requirements that previously announced. And the council's made a motion to sign the letter of agreement, so those funds will come in. Some of the reporting for the first quarter is all there, so why do we have, why is this so late coming to council?
Yeah, you don't send it very fast.
They didn't send it out in time? Noted. And it's been moved by Ted and Josh to accept and approve to sign the agreement, so that is done. We have a 10 o'clock appointment, Angela. 10:03.
But you might not finish regular stuff. I don't think you only have a couple things up, right?
Are they available to meet now?
We can find out where they are.
Well,
But that would be a closed session,
okay.
so I can find that out. Do you want to continue?
So we will then deal with the legal invoices and while we're waiting for that. So,
They are ready, Shelley said.
and who are we meeting with at 10? Is this the
It's an internal meeting.
Colin Young? Youngman?
No.
Okay. Okay, Alan Pratt invoice, there's, the new invoice is $5,337. And this relates to Culberson. And then there's a JFK law invoice that relates to tenant issues of $288. Is there a motion to pay these invoices?
You would need a separate motion for those two.
Yeah. We'll deal with the Alan Pratt invoice. Is there a motion to approve payment for this invoice?
I'll move, Chief.
Chris? Is there a second for that motion? Josh? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. $288 for the JFK law invoice. Is there a motion to pay that invoice?
I can move.
Is there a seconder? Hello? Is there a seconder for to pay the Alan Pratt invoice? Chris?
No, you're on the second one. If we did Alan, you mean the.
No, we've done Alan. It's been moved and seconded and voted on and approved. We're on Alan Pratt. Stacey's.
No, you're on
We're on
JFK.
JFK.
Oh, JFK. We're on JFK. Stacia and Chris. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion's carried. I'm taking some hay fever medication, so my head is kind of. See approved. The recreation facility. Is Tom going to come in for this feasibility study award? Could we bring him in, please?
Are we meeting at 10?
Are the parties ready that are supposed to meet at
Do you
10?
want to finish the streaming part though with these ones, or do you want to stop that and then go to the other meeting?
We can wrap this up then.
Just let us know when they're available. We'll carry on until they are.
Shelley said they're available now, but they're asking to finish up our agenda.
Do you want to finish your streaming part of the agenda?
We can do that. So, all right,
So you want Tommy right now?
we can. While waiting for Tom, we'll go to the upcoming meetings. Just note those in your book. We'll mention them. We'll take a break while we're waiting. Oh, there's Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Good morning, Tom. How are you this morning? So we are on item number 9, the recreation feasibility study.
Okay.
The study award. So Tom, do you want to go ahead and present to the council?
So we put the call out for request for proposal for the feasibility and design development for the new recreation facility that we're collaborating with the Parks and Rec and the TCDF with. We only received 2 responses. It's been provided to the Parks and Rec committee, each of the proposals, and they've weighed them and made the recommendation. We've reviewed the recommendation. It's been forwarded to TCDF, who support it, and the recommendation is to proceed with, I think it was KL Martin and Associates
That's what you're recommending?
for the first phase. Yeah.
And what is,
Limit the award to just the feasibility stage for the 75,000, and then we can look at the other stages after we get that to see if the project proceeds past that stage.
okay. Is there any questions from the council?
Yeah. Did we put this out for the community to give us input on this one?
That'll be part of the feasibility.
So there's consultation during the feasibility study?
Yep.
It happens during the work that the consultant's going to do?
We'll have a concept plan based on what the needs are of the TCDF, the Parks and Rec, the people that will be so the fitness center is slated to go in this building, so we'll get their
And so
information, what they need. We'll have a draft concept plan and some preliminary reports that we can share with the community and get their input to, do we change, do we modify, comments, concerns.
so it's not set in stone, it's all
This is
subject
just
to
feasibility.
community consultation?
Yep.
Chris?
Chief, I'd asked some time ago, did we get a costing report on how much has been spent on consultants to date? Because I know at one point there was talk of a complex on 49, NHL size arena, and this and this and that.
Okay,
How much was the consultants for that?
Sorry, point of order, we're talking about something very specific right
Yeah.
now.
It is very specific, Chief, very specific that if we
That's a
spent,
separate agenda
if
item.
we spent potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars on a report, that have we washed our hands of it, that whole feasibility study, all that?
No,
And now
it's-
on to the next one?
So
So
that-
it's, they're
That's
both
still,
connected.
that's still alive as a separate project, and it's not hundreds, I don't have the exact figure, but I want to say it was probably in about the 30 or 40,000, and I believe we cost shared it with TCDF.
No, I mean when we looked
arena.
at doing the arena,
Yep,
remember
yep.
the NHL arena?
Yeah, we
How
cost shared it with TCDF, and I want to say it was only around 30. I don't have the figure in front of me, and that was a couple years ago, but we can get that.
Okay.
But it's a separate, like that project isn't dead. We're waiting for funding to come that would be applicable to.
Okay, so that project that's not dead, that's still potentially a big arena
Yep.
and other,
Unless it changes with, my understanding is that there's arena committee that has either been formed or will be formed, and they will take that mantle on and proceed with that project to refine it more, because it's still in the feasibility stage. There was no detailed design done.
So all
we
of
started
this
the
is still
feasibility.
in the planning feasibility stage. Of course, the
Yeah.
money's got to be identified.
So this gives us all the
A lot of
information
labor,
and
yeah.
preliminary planning we need to facilitate
the
a
community
proper and
wants.
effective lobby strategy, similar to what we did with the long-term care.
okay, so who was the consultant that did the work on the proposed complex, which had the NHL size arena and all that?
The arena, Smoke Architect.
Smoke, and was there not part of that, was there not like a gymnasium as part of that?
Correct, yep. At one of the concept plans includes a
Okay.
gymnasium, yep.
Okay, so it did have an arena and a gymnasium, and they only charged 30,000 approximately?
I feel like it was for that phase.
No, I mean, in
I don't have, then I'll take that number back and we'll get that number to you if you want it.
Okay, because my concern is that if we potentially, and that's why I'd like to know the number, so that maybe I'm not informed, but if we potentially spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on something that we kind of put on the shelf, then we move on to the next baby, which is this one in front of us. I'm not going in front of a community and say, oh, yeah, we spent hundreds of thousands and we went from here to here to here, and
Well,
So
again,
how else would you
I do
plan
that.
to?
I'm looking for the, I'd like to know how much we spent. It's a pretty specific
okay,
question.
we can get you.
And we get
How
that.
much was spent on consultants to date on the previous recreation complexes? And now that I'm worried that I'm hearing and it's not dead, but now we're taking a
What I'm asking
gymnasium.
for is these questions, they can be put out in advance. We don't have to wait till council.
No, I did ask this long ago, Chief.
And how did you ask?
I asked for what we was spent on the consultants
send an
to
email
date.
to somebody to
I
request
can
it?
double check that, Chief, but I know I've asked
We
that.
could get it. It's irrelevant to this conversation because it's a separate
I think
project.
it's totally
Implementing
irrelevant.
the formal process to
If we
request
want to make it part
information
of this
so that
conversation,
we
that's
get-
fine. We just delay proceeding. This is council's.
Okay, if you could get the information that Chris has requested, Tom, that would be great. And Angela, that would be great.
Okay, so I'll repeat the question, Chief.
There's no objection to giving information that council's requesting.
So
But let's try to stay focused on the issue that's on the agenda and the addition, it's the new recreation feasibility study awarding the contract to date. And of course, all these, there'll be community meetings, but part of the problem here is you don't have either in surveys or community meetings a high input, but everybody wants to come in when something's decided, then bash it into the ground. That's the other thing. So when there's a consultation process, it's very important to encourage people to come out and participate, to put their thoughts forward instead of derailing things at the 11th hour. Because, I mean, there are funding timelines, there's money out there, and we've got to get our act together if we're going to plug into any of that money. And time is running out.
Which is
Okay,
why it's
Josh,
important to have
you
these
had your
preliminary
hand up.
planning.
Well, I just wanted to, as we're talking about specific requests, so I'm going to let Chris table his specific request for the information he's after, and then I'll comment.
There's nothing wrong with council wishing to be informed. I've got no objection for sharing information. We answer questions from all the members of council. That's fine. Okay, so that will be done. Note it in the minutes. Chris has asked for a report on the number of monies paid to consultants concerning the recreational activity, recreational issues. Okay? If that can be provided for next council,
Well-
let me send it
Well,
to all the council members and staff.
I would ask it to be more specific than that, because that's a very, to say recreational, I don't know, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so guess it was Smoke did the first
And the second.
round, and the second, okay.
So it
Well,
was, the second was just a revision to the first.
yeah, yeah. So I just want to know how much money in total was paid to Smoke or any other consultants regarding the proposed arenas, complex, et cetera, et cetera. How much has been spent to date? Pretty simple request.
So I think it's important to distinguish between the project that Smoke was hired to work on compared to what this project is. So I've heard language used, and I'm not sure why it's used. It was never in the feasibility study that I saw about an NHL rink. I feel like that infers that this is some monstrosity of a facility, when in reality I think it was modeled after the Napanee arena, the Napanee.
Yeah, and NHL level, AHL level, OHL level, college level.
Like if we're talking a rink size,
all
right?
same.
But if we're
100 by
talking
200.
ice surface size, but to kind of label a project as an NHL arena, that to me speaks to capacity, which is 10, 15, 20,000 people. When a project like this, I don't think it's appropriate or accurate to refer to or suggest or infer that this facility that is modeled after the Napanee arena would be anything remotely close to a quote NHL arena. So I'm not sure why that label has seemed to find its way on that project. Also in mind with that project, when it was developed, that was an application specific to the infrastructure green initiative.
Green inclusive build.
So one of the criticisms, maybe not criticism, one of the concerns of recreational facilities has always been the upkeep, the operations budget, and how they are potential deficit drivers. So when the opportunity arose to perhaps make a more efficient, more economically operated facility, some costs were increased, not unlike the long-term care. But the idea was if the application was successful, then the capital was kind of infused, that what was left would be easier to operate, easier to maintain, and would be potentially less of a deficit driver. So just as we're getting specific with things and wanting to go over previous expenditures on or explorations on projects, that's a bit of context. So I think if we are going to be specific, that's important that
Okay.
all the council and it be on the record as to why those things
Yeah,
were.
it's
but-
very important everybody be on the same page about what's being built and what the approach is, and to both consultation and the approach to get the money to build it and operate it.
And this is why the feasibility is so important. So
Yeah.
we can make sure that what we're putting in there is what either the staff that would be going in the building needs, the program needs, the community wants, needs. Making sure that we have a good round O&M budget so that we can ensure that we can pay for it afterwards, that it's not just going to be a black hole budget. And also, like, so for this one, for example, the cost to have both the gym and the arena made such a large project that it was decided to separate them so that it's more easily accessible to secure the funding.
Okay. So, is there then a motion then to proceed with this work, to award the feasibility contract to KL Martin Associates for a total of $75,000 to approve the total project budget of $116,760 that will be 50/50 cost shared with the Tyendinaga Development Fund. So who is paying for it? 50% comes from TCDF, and where does the other 50% come?
I think we're
OLG?
proposing co-fund. The
I'm
COVID
sorry?
funds. COVID funds.
I couldn't hear Tom.
COVID funds.
COVID funds, okay. And we've got to get that COVID money spent. It's not going to be carried forward forever. Is there any other additional questions from the council? Is there a motion then to proceed with awarding this contract to do the feasibility study.
I can make that motion, and at the same time, I can support the request for information on other projects. So I don't think that it's necessarily tied, but I can make the motion too.
Okay, we'll have those two separate motions
Yeah.
because we won't combine them with this because this is what we're
Yeah,
awarding.
yeah.
To
More
award
so,
the
more so
con-
a comment.
It's been moved by Josh. Is there a seconder?
I can second.
Stacia, anyone opposed?
I'm negative, Chief, and I just gave you the reason why.
Could you restate the reason?
Yes,
I'm
we
not, I'm not comfortable with the amount of money being spent on consultants for this proposed new facility, the last facility, like a recreation complex, And I'm hearing, oh, this one's gonna move with the gymnasium potentially, the one with the gymnasium arena, maybe that's still alive, it's just,
No, that one's been
I'm
changed
not
to just an
overwhelmed
arena.
with it. I would want to see the cost. And my gut
Okay.
feels it's in the hundreds of thousands with nothing concrete. That's my position, and whatever. We're all entitled to our opinion.
Can I ask what what you might propose as an alternative?
You could
Alright.
give me the numbers today, because I'm sure they're right there, and we could table this afternoon.
Well, you're saying you want to utilize the previous.
No, what I'm simply asking, which I asked earlier, which is an action item, is how much have we spent to date for all the consultants for recreation complex,
Okay.
arena, et cetera, If I see that costing, which I'm sure you got to just push a button over there. When I see that, if it's in the hundreds of thousands, we're going that road again, then I'm not acceptable. If it's only 30, 40,000 when it's all said and done, then I'm okay.
But I guess my question is, how would you go about building a recreation complex for the community? If let's say that number is $500,000 that last project
Yep.
cost. What do you propose in terms of next steps for building a facility?
Well, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I know that if a community member says to me, you know what, Chris, you guys spent $500,000 on consultants for their arena, potentially.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now you're going this direction.
The other thing
I
is
don't
that
feel comfortable just going, oh, well, you know, going
The-
this way and.
No, I'm asking you, how do you go about now building a facility for the people to use?
Okay, I want to see the costing on all the work consultants to date. And then potentially maybe, well, you know what, let's hear from the community,
About whether or not we need a sports complex?
the scope.
So most of the stuff that's inside the sports complex that we're proposing right now
okay,
was identified in the survey that was done with Parks and Rec, the indoor walking trail, the gym, etc.
a comprehensive recreational plan.
I can get
what I
the
think we're
numbers
trying
for
to
Chris,
arrive at.
but again, it's a separate project. It's an arena with the banquet center.
Really
The
what we need
gymnasium was
in terms
removed to
of our-
separate the two projects, which
Yeah.
this is the separation of the projects.
So this project was identified or supported by previous consultations, recent consultations, separate from any type of arena complex. There's no pad, and it's a walking track, gymnasium, and a fitness center that would free up our.
And also, so just to clarify, the original scope, when we looked at the original feasibility with Smoke, was arena, gymnasium, fitness center. The gymnasium was removed from that equation,
Yeah.
from the arena and the fitness center. So you have, those plans were revised, so you have the arena and banquet center, and then you have the fitness
Okay.
center and gymnasium.
Just so it's not confusing, and then we have to try and remember what we heard. Just send us an email, Tom, outlining what's in the plan.
Sure.
That will help everybody get on the
Which,
same
it's in
page.
the briefing note, what's in the plan.
Yeah,
is
okay.
The fitness center, the gymnasium, space for staff, for the recreation staff, the fitness center staff, some commercial space, because we're gonna have to make this facility, cash positive.
The community does want to have, proper recreation facilities. I would strongly recommend too, Tom, at some point in time in the future, we create some kind of space either in the ditches or something for these ATVs that seem to run on the roads, because there's really a lot of near hits when they fly up on the road in front of cars out of the ditches. I'm just afraid that there'll be a fatality at some point in time.
Okay.
So there is no place for them to go. Then there's a lot of complaints about them going on people's private property, knocking down their fences and that kind of thing. So we should really have some planning for that, because people will always have them. And so they're not destroying property. And quite a few people, the young people, like to ride the ATVs, and it's part of their recreation. If we can find a way to maybe manage that better, that might be good. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Chris has voted negative. Ted, what's your vote?
I support.
Support. The motion is carried.
Thanks, Tom.
Now, Josh has made a motion to get the list, the report on.
No, I supported the request. I don't
Or-
see any,
or
I
do
don't
you
see
know-
any issue with obviously having that information be available.
So it's an action item then for the August 2nd to bring a report on the.
Well, no, it's in support of
consultants.
Chris's requested action item to have that presented as soon as possible.
Yeah, but Chris did request the action. I thought you were going to include that in your motion with.
No, I just said I
Okay.
for comment. I support that as well.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Chief,
But there's an
can you note my objection as to why?
Yes,
Thank you.
we will do that. Just check the minutes to make sure that it's worded the way you want it, Chris, with Shelley. Okay. North Street development. These are the apartment buildings, right, Tom? And how?
This is a housing development that will include 14 residential lots for single detached, and a lot for an apartment building, and a lot for a threeplex. Our intent from the beginning, with the recommendations that came out of the report that we started with the feasibility for the 4 locations for housing developments, was that this would be a net zero energy tiny village. So the plan would be to take those 14 lots and to twin them to 28 tiny homes.
And where does this money come from?
To build?
No, the approval budget, 1 million, 1.9 million.
So we were approved through IS's immediate needs fund in June of last year, or the application was June of last year, for 640,000.
And MBQ would, so the request is for North Street development. And the recommendation from staff is that the council approve the updated construction budget of $1,956,962, with MBQ contributing $1,212,472, and to move to tender immediately. Comments from the council or questions?
Yes, Chief. So what was the scope of work for Greer Galloway? Were they the water sewer, or what were they?
There was no water sewer planned at the time. So the water and sewer project just came recently through Todd's office.
Okay, so what was Greer Galloway hired to do?
So underneath the feasibility that we looked at for the locations, we did the species at risk, the phase 1 environmental site assessments, the geotechnical, the topographical survey. We did a concept plan, and they provided a rough construction estimate. Would probably be like a class E maybe at the time.
And what was Ainsley hired to do?
So after we've completed the report on the feasibility side, we looked at, so underneath that, we looked at 6 locations, and 4 locations were recommended to council to proceed to detailed design, which was North Street, a 3rd phase to Huron Brandt Drive housing development, a 2nd phase to Sadie's, and Beach Road.
Okay.
So Ainsley's contract is to do the detailed design.
Okay. I hope my last question. Don't mind glasses, so sorry. There's a spreadsheet from Trudeau. What are you proposing that Trudeau does?
Nothing, but the option would be to, so our original intent was to use as a change order to their existing contract. to facilitate a quicker turnaround. We're under time constraints, and right now infrastructure is still in the area doing their project, so that makes coordination and access to the site more difficult.
And isn't Trudeau doing the water line?
Correct. That's why we were looking at putting it.
water and
They're
sewer.
already on Brant and North Street, so we wouldn't have to worry about crossing their job site or any coordination between the two contractors. So the original approach was going to be looked at to
So on North
Use as a
Street, they're
change order.
providing water and sewer, right?
so Todd's project brings the water and sewer up to North Street from Brant's, I believe.
From Brant, okay, so then it's available to
And
service.
then we're going to take it from where he finishes, and we're going to take it up into the subdivision.
Okay,
But previous to when we did the original, there was no water or sewer up that.
yeah, it only
ended
went
at
to where
Pond
the
Brant,
houses
I
are
believe. Yeah.
in town. It's a very short distance.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
sorry, Chief, okay, so Trudeau Construction, how much are they asking for to do this work?
Trudeau's estimate was, I didn't provide it because we're going to be going out to tender, but I can send that to you separately. But the recommendation is to go to tender.
I'm sorry?
The recommendation is to go to tender.
Go to tender?
Yep.
Okay.
We're in hope that we can meet our timeline. By the looks of it, we're probably going to have to do the lot filling and utilities in the spring. But it does look like we should be able to get at least
It
the roads
is a
in.
very short distance. I'm wondering how many tenders you're going to have to, how many feet is
I
it?
guarantee we're going to get at least 2.
Okay, it's a what's the number of feet from where the pipe is now to North Street? I know it's a very short distance.
I don't know offhand, Chief. It's gonna be on North Street, so it's coming up and looping around, I believe.
Yeah.
We're gonna tie into it to come up into the house.
So that will service the houses already on North Street.
That's already gonna be done.
Yeah.
That's through Todd's project. Mine is taking it, and we're gonna be building into the field that we own to put a.
So the
housing
water
project.
line is going to service the housing on North Street now, and then they'll
And then
be
we're gonna
serviced,
tap
and then
into
you'll
that
tap
as-
into when you build the subdivision.
Correct, both water and sewer.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
And then the intent would be to twin the lots. If we're going tiny home, we'll twin. If we don't proceed with the
Like,
tiny
we
homes
really
for
need to
whatever
get on
reason,
with
then they'll
this
be single
because
detached.
there is a lot of pressure for housing. The housing is one of the community's, water and housing is one of the community's biggest needs.
Yep, and the nice thing with the tiny house development is that it's a innovative way to try to tackle homelessness or transitional housing with the net zero added on. We play into what the
And there is a serious lack of,
government's funding has typically been towards net zero, so that
in
it should
Hastings
do
County-
well,
yeah.
stand well against other applications.
Hastings County is currently in a state of crisis because of the lack of affordable housing. The county's never rescinded that resolution that their council passed, and we are in the same situation. And I really think with the number of people that are on that wait list, it keeps growing, and I think we need to consider declaring a state of emergency for housing.
And that's the nice thing about if we can proceed with the tiny village that's transitional, it'll give us 28 homes that we can use as temporary housing until they can get through our waiting list and onto the thing. The I guess the con to it is that they're 1-bedroom tiny homes, so your specific need, right? Your seniors or singles, childless couples.
Because the housing department right now is under a tremendous amount of pressure, and they take a lot of abuse because of everybody wants to jump to the top of the line, the head of the line to get into a place. Right now, there is not even an understanding, that the houses that are up on Upper Slash are for seniors 55 and older. People are upset that people are moving out of the Elders Lodge in there, but it's for seniors. It's not housing for the general
Well,
community.
it's in recognizing that we maybe could do a little bit better with my
So we need to get
communications
on with
get
building
that
houses
information out there.
to get rid of a lot of that pressure. We have to address it. We can't keep delaying and delaying and delaying. So is there a motion then to approve this budget? There's no other funds we can shake the bushes to
I'm
get
trying
something
to work with CMHC. It's just whether or not it can come in time. I'm optimistic that we're going to get CMHC on board for subdivision development. It's just that cost eligibility don't start till you get the
I
approval.
had
So
a-
anything we do now, the cost wouldn't actually be eligible for that project, and we're working on a November 30th deadline right now.
So
which
I've had
hopefully we'll be able to
conversations.
get extended.
I've had conversations with Kyle Weir and Michael Laverne and Nico Paul that we need to get on with some money, some capital money from Indigenous Services Canada.
So they're
for
in on it, but
subdivision
they're
development.
maxed out at 40,000 a lot.
So I'd like to set up at some point in time a lobby session with the department
Mhm.
to lobby for those funds but I just need to know where it's going to be built, what it's going to cost.
So I just received emails today from Ainley for Beach Road here on Brant Drive, Phase 3 and Sadie's.
Well,
We are
why
now
don't we
ready for public consultation.
why don't we
So
focus
it's gonna get
on-
posted on our website for the portal like we did with North Street, but we're also, this time around, because we have a little bit more time, we're going to do an open house at the community center. So that should be getting announced here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
I'm just waiting on the updated construction estimate for them. And then I can get that to you so we can get a lobby package together.
Chris?
So we have a contract in place with Trudeau to do existing work up there.
Correct.
Are you asking us to, and I see the logic behind staying with one contractor, but are you asking us to sole source them for the additional work?
No.
No,
Okay.
we're gonna go to tender.
Okay, so is there then a motion to award this, to go ahead, proceed with this work?
To
To approve the construction budget totaling 1,956,162,000 with MP2 considering 1,212,472 to move to the tendering immediately. Is there a motion to do that? Who will move?
Tell me, the 1.3 million that you're asking for from MBQ's contribution, did you talk to Cecil about that?
It's
So you
already-
identified
It's
that?
already identified in our current budget for this year
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's good.
and was part of the cash flow.
We'll
that
lobby
was up
Indigenous Services
5%.
Canada and CMHC to see what we can get toward that 1.2 million.
Pardon?
We'll lobby CMHC and Indigenous Services Canada to see if we can get an additional contribution toward that.
I can get you, I'll take all the information, get a package for you.
Okay.
I can move that.
Moved by Stacia. Who will second it?
I'll second.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Do you have any idea when Trudeau will be finished? I know it's not your area, Tom, but has Todd mentioned when they'll be finished the work with the water and sewer?
Hopefully sooner than what they're actually figuring, but
I understand that we're making great.
I want to
guns on
say
Bellswell.
September, October, but it's not my project, so I really probably shouldn't give you a date, but I feel like it's early fall.
But there has been a lot accomplished in terms of providing the community with safe drinking water with that accelerated servicing program. Instead of waiting until 2026, a lot of that work is already done.
Hopefully we can coordinate with their contractor and that runs
Okay.
smoothly.
The third round of the Rapid Housing Initiative, which is administered by Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
RHIs are private, okay, sorry,
The elder care home is the last one.
Elders Care Home. So the tenders closed on July 13th.
So this
Tom?
is, if we can just pause for a second, this is the architect. We may have an answer to one of these questions that will come up.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
We'll take a 5-minute break then while people are, we'll take a 5-minute break. Okay. So on July the 13th, the tenders closed for the long-term care project. And Tom, if you want to go ahead and make a presentation on the tenders.
So at the closing, our lowest bid was 64 million, and it was by Niacon Limited. Our construction budget at the time was around 54 million, and then we were carrying approximately 8 million in escalation allowance. So with that, most of the increase was covered, but we're now at a point where the equity for MBQ is going to have to increase. So I believe, I'm just waiting if Shelley can confirm. I had to update the briefing note after a meeting with CMHC. So the last presentation on the budget to the council showed our equity reducing down to around 2.5 based upon we found additional money for nonprofits, and there was an increase to the construction grant provided by the ministry.
I remember that.
So I showed that as a decrease to our equity. CMHC did the opposite and showed it as a decrease to theirs. So right now we need to get the LOI in place fairly quickly. And if we were to make that change, there's money, our debt servicing on the project can go higher. But if we make the request to do that now to get it in the LOI, we'll be delayed by a few weeks. So there's going to be a brief window between the LOI and the funding agreement where we can make the request for additional lending if we want to capture some of that back.
So they had budgeted the interest rate at 4%, right? But the interest rate is likely going to be 2.84%.
If we locked in today, the interest rate would be 2.8%.
So that will create a saving on the project
carrying
cost.
4% as a buffer. So there's also that could theoretically save us money on the financing fees. We have a $2.7 million contingency, which I believe is 10% of the, would be 5% maybe. Which sounds like a lot, but on a project this big and this complex may not be. Cross our fingers that we don't have to use it all, and that would then lower our equity.
And I've had also a conversation with Doug Moses from the John M. Parrott Foundation, and they give out $5.5 million a year for projects in the Quinte area. And so he said this should bode very well with the committee. So we're going to be submitting a project application to them
We're going to continue to
on June the 27th, and I will continue with the fundraising
and
initiatives
we're going to have conversations with this to see if
once
they
all
can
these other issues
increase their
permit
side.
time.
Right now, if you look at all of the other federal funding sources, ISCA's the lowest. So if we could maybe leverage something from them as well. But right now we have the tenders closed. Niacon though is currently trying to facilitate their bonding. So the bonding that they had was specific towards their bonding had met the levels of what the estimated cost was at the usually with the tender this size, they're finding out all their fees at the last minute before they submit. It's over their current bonding capacity. So they're working with their insurance company and their bonding company to get that increased. They don't have that approval in place yet. So
And when will
this
they?
award would be a conditional to them meeting those requirements.
Okay. Chris?
Will there be provisions in this for set aside for our local? Typically there's 5-10%
Within
set
the
aside.
tender, it was 7%. 7% of the, so on 64 million.
That's pretty standard. I know we go back and forth.
The higher it went, it was driving actually general contractors away who can do this by having a higher local content portion. That's why we lowered it from 10 to 7.
Yeah, I think on other projects, we've identified percentages. We've also identified just specific amounts when they get, like, I think the fire hall was just a specific amount. The water lines have been just specific amounts.
And that's a
What you
minimum,
don't want to
not
do
a
is get it
maximum.
too high, and then we don't have the resources within the community to address some of it. So right now we're at about 5.5 million. I'm confident that we should be able to get that, and it will bode better for them if they get more. I'm hoping that they're not going to restrict it 7% just to meet the bare minimum, right? We provided a list of all of the contractors that we have registered, and we added ones that we knew that
You
were
had
registered.
notified local contractors of
Yes.
who
We posted it.
who were
on-
bidding, right?
We
So
didn't
who were submitting
contact. We
tender.
didn't contact them directly.
No, but you posted notice as to
Yep.
this is who.
This is who the generals are.
So as
the
they're building-
qualified generals are. Yep.
Yeah, as they're building
Yep.
their prices, be sure to engage with these folks.
So right now, one of the things that Snyder is doing is still reviewing the package and looking at all this information now starts to come in as to who their subs are, and then making sure they meet that 7%. It's a requirement of the tender, so if they don't meet that, then we would look at either having them increase it or not awarding. We can also, if we see something in there where there is a contractor that isn't part of their sub, but we have that capability, we can also have those discussions with the general contractor.
And the issue is that we have to have shovels in the ground by August 31st because there's $10 million additional CFS
Yeah.
subsidy from the province.
Plus your additional top-ups for your O&M.
It's 10.3 million.
But that's to have the shovel in the ground. We have to still go back to the ministry and request permission to proceed to construction. And that package is, I think we have to have that finalized by
August 4th.
August 11th. So we want to be submitting for August 4th.
So is there a motion then, the recommendation from the council for the staff, and I agree with it, is conditional approval to award contract to Nikon Limited, pending final confirmation from Snyder Architects that they can meet all the tender requirements for an amount of $64 million. Approve the final project budget of $75,947,107 with MBQ contributing the upset limit of
So that
5.893425.
number has changed. So Shelley, can you,
What is that number going to be?
after our conversations with CMHC the other day, the approximately 500,000 that we thought we were underneath our 3 million is being added onto it.
So what should this number be?
They reduced their contribution by that amount.
So what should this number be then?
Let's get the exact number, but it's like
Okay.
6.2 something. And the conditional award is that when we get approval today, we're not going to actually go Nikon and say you've got approval. This is going to allow us a couple more days to make sure that they can facilitate all the requirements underneath the tender. And if they can award, it's just that because you guys meet every 2 weeks and our timelines are now starting to get jammed up. This way, if I find out Friday that, yeah, the 7% and the assurance is all there, then we can proceed with the award and I won't have to come back to council. But if they don't meet that, then we don't contact them for the award.
What's plan B then?
I don't want plan B.
Okay,
We don't want, plan B is
I don't think there'll be a plan B.
69,950,000.
okay.
So
Doubles
another
our
another 5
contribution.
million.
So this is an upset limit. It doesn't mean that it's going to cost that because there's a $2.7 million contingency. There's going to be more money in the budget because it's
6.9 isn't an upset. The 6.4, and if worst case scenario, we have to go to the second bidder, that's your contract rate. When you look at the project budget, that's almost 76 million. That's the upset limit. Because there's a contingency based in there, our soft costs are in there.
So then
there's
what
the
number
cost-
do you want me to put in here if it's not 5.8?
I don't have, I will have to.
Can you get it, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay. Today, or do you need more time to figure it
I
out?
think Shelley's gonna be able to get it first.
Do you want to just go and get it and then we can wait for you?
Are you saying Shelley's getting it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Chief, I have a question while Shelley's pulling that up.
Okay.
And I know it's early in the game, but you know our situation when the contractors in the community didn't get a chance to bid, so there's still lots of time for the general, once they're approved, to make sure they meet the requirements for.
There's not a lot of
They
time
have to meet
because
the requirements before we award.
Yeah.
If they don't, if right
And
now
we-
we review Nikon's tender and let's say they're at 5% for whatever reason, then we'll be sitting down with them. figuring
And they
out how
have
they're gonna
to-
get the 7%.
and they have to mobilize and start the construction by August 31st, or we lose $10.3 million from the province. That was the incentive to get this thing places built.
If they meet the 7%, we can have conversation. If we look at it and say, so-and-so isn't there and you don't have anybody identified for that's drywall or whatever, and if we've got a drywall, we
Or
can
taping and
try to
lighting,
get
or
them to
electrical.
contact and push them towards
Yes,
that.
yeah.
I don't know if we could,
So the general contractor
make
has, in a lot of past projects, have actually all exceeded
Yeah.
the minimum requirement.
Yeah, so I know it'd be more of a question for Schneider, and I don't put you on the spot,
Yep,
but
go ahead.
there's enough time and room for all these things to fall into place. Like, we don't think that contract has already met with all of our locals and it's bang, bang, bang. It's probably they put their numbers in there, again, they get approval, Is it okay if we're approved now? Who are the locals?
The only
We
thing,
won't be-
Chris, is they
No,
have.
they should
when-
have
when-
7% in, they should have the minimum
Okay.
7% in their contract now identified. It's just that at the time when they're pulling their tender together, if another local contract would have came in before the deadline, but before, because they can't wait till the last minute to send it to us, right? So they may have had to carry a different contractor for that specific portion. So we need to get an updated list of their subcontractor list. But if they meet the 7%, then we're proceeding. We can sit down and have conversations to try to increase that. But the minimum requirement is 7% for them to be awarded the job.
and
That's,
in
that's
the
the
contract-
minimum, and in the past, it's exceeded. the
It's
minimum.
exceeded
my
far, and the
understanding,
water stuff,
from my
Bill has got a lot of contract work with the water lines. All the hookups are Bill.
Yeah, I just had a subcontractor come the other day and say, hey, who do I approach for some work here?
Well,
I
then
said,
pick up the
Schneider's
phone and-
architect, but
Pick up the phone and call the general contractor, establish the
Well,
work
yeah, but he's
relationship.
not-
Don't
we haven't
expect
established it
chief and
yet.
council to do it for them.
right.
Market your own services.
Yeah, no, they're just asking who do they call, and I don't want to say, yeah, I move it, and all of a sudden, hey, wait,
Anyway,
I didn't get a chance to bid
So
on
what
it
will
yet.
happen,
So
usually,
just to clarify, the bids have closed.
For the
tender-
general.
For the general.
Yeah.
usually
The
what
general
happens.
can make a request to change their subs, but if they don't make that request, do we have influence to make them change? Yes. Can we make them change? Questionable.
Usually, don't they usually have a meeting with all the people who provide services in advance of them starting the work so they know?
We had a 4-week tender period on a $75 million project.
Yeah.
budget. That was in the cards,
Okay.
but all of that notice went out, the information on who the.
So all these
pre-qualified
general
candidates went out.
contractors know who the potential
We gave them-
subcontractors
We
are,
gave a list of all of the local contractors that.
and it's up to them
are
to manage the
registered or that
contract.
Are not registered and we're aware of.
And all the subs were made aware of who was participating.
We posted who all the 5, I think at that time it was 6 pre-qualified contractors. 1 pulled out, so we only received 5 bids.
So the generals were notified of the subs,
here?
the subs were notified of the general.
And they were specifically told, it was in the tender, it was repointed out, that there is a minimum requirement for 7% content.
So on Josh's comment there, if somebody said, oh, no, I didn't get a chance, there's proof that we put it out to the community that the subs that, hey, if you do any kind of this work. here's
Yeah,
the
we'll
cost.
have my email to the architect, and then the tender package itself will have that package.
Right.
with
but
all
the
our
notice to
local
community
people.
members said,
But
Yeah, I saw the notice of the
is there a
community.
guarantee? Is there a guarantee that every local contractor is on that list, or that every local contractor is going to be considered experienced enough or licensed to do a certain?
Yeah,
I can't guarantee that.
no, that's fine.
Okay. So what's the number, Shelley?
Was it that climactic?
Okay, then I'll have to. I updated it. It was the one, the last one that was, for whatever reason, it was still in the exec drive, so I updated it.
If I may,
Yes.
regardless of what that number is to the dollar, it's a lot more than we originally had approved.
Just to clarify though, when we first started this project, MBQ's equity was $6 million.
And what's our agreed or our approved contribution?
My current council.
Yeah, the most recent one,
3 million.
3 million. So, I'd like to hear more about how we're going to reduce that.
Lobbying, but there's no guarantee, and more funding applications. But
Is there anything in particular? Or are you
I
talking
would like
generally
to have
speaking?
conversations with this to ask them why is CMHC committing 25 million, Infrastructure Canada is committing 25 million, and they're at 5. We have an opportunity to submit to the John M. Parrott Foundation. There's no guarantee you get it. Sounds like our project fits well with what their mandate and what their goals are. So I would assume that we would probably be successful. At what level and how much, we don't know. They're not going to give millions. We're probably more looking at the hundreds of thousands if we're fortunate. It could be even 50 but at this point, I think we take whatever we can. And then the other thing is, we're between getting the LOI and signing the funding agreement with CMHC, we're going to request to increase the debt.
The debt, I'm not really big Yeah.
But the more we can, so if we want to go back to 3 million, we take that extra 3.2 million and put that on the debt
But
side.
I guess if we borrow that additional amount from CMHC, there's enough money in that annual contribution from the Ministry of Long-Term Care to service that debt. Is that correct, Tom?
That would be my understanding. Yeah, we wouldn't proceed if it wasn't.
We just borrow the additional amount we need at the 2.84% interest rate. And
Or
then
whatever
again,
the
and
interest
again, the
rate is
whole
when we lock it.
contingency may not be used just because there's a contingent. I mean, I can't see in that project where there would be a need, but they do provide a certain percentage for contingency, and it's 2.7 million.
One question, I won't say it's a concern yet, but in our pursuit of finding more grant money to reduce both debt and our contribution, would any of these other partners view that as amending their bottom line as this last one just was? So if we say, hey, ISKA's gonna double what they're at 5, now they're at $10 million, or they had $2 million. Does anybody else go, well, then I
No,
kinda-
because by the time we get them, we should have signed funding agreements. That's the problem, is we don't have a signed funding agreement, which is your other risk. You don't have a signed LOI with CMHC, and you don't have a signed funding agreement with.
And then it puts the whole project
Infrastructure
in
Canada.
jeopardy.
yeah, and that's the
I've
last thing
seen
anybody
full
wants. to-
drafts back and forth on the Infrastructure Canada, and it's a
The other
matter
thing
of
I'm going to
providing
do is
them
I'm
now
going
these
to
updated
pressure
numbers.
FedDev, because FedDev should be helping here and they're not.
But
And the other thing, we haven't applied to Corp yet either.
and generally, I wouldn't be coming without the bonding already confirmed and those funding agreements in ink. But we're running 3 simultaneous processes that
So
all
there's
have,
$70 million
that are all
in subsidy.
contingent upon the ministry giving us the approval. Without that ministry approval and meeting their deadlines, we lose 10 million, and now we just
If you're saying that the establishment itself, the home care itself, can service the additional debt that would be required to make that project happen, I would much rather go that route and kind of have its debt rather than MBQ's equity be double what we've already approved. And again, I understand that that's a living number, that I'm more than confident in the chief's ability to turn straw.
Okay, well, because
into
we haven't
gold,
had a
right?
conversation with ISGET about what the bids have been.
it's just I don't. If
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about funding, right? I'm talking about
Yeah.
funding.
But I
So-
think not to
without our
put the whole
ability
thing at
to
risk, we need to get on with
proceed.
it.
And that's what I'm trying to say, is not to put the project at risk. So, I'm being honest, when you say it's over $6 million of contribution from MBQ,
Potentially.
potentially, yeah, that's fair. That jumps out at me.
Yep.
That's a jumps out off.
I much liked 5.8 more than.
I liked 2.5. I liked 2.5 about a month and a half ago, but,
Well, we didn't know until the
I
bids came in.
understand. I understand. So, go ahead, Chris.
What's your recommendation, Chief?
Well, my recommendation is to complete the application to John M. Parrott Foundation. I did have a chat with Doug Moses about it and found out they allocate 5.5 million, and we'll apply. And I guess I'll have a chat with Nico Paul. CMHC are pretty much there's potential to finance the additional amount. Was it
We just won't be able to. So there's a window between the LOI and the funding agreement.
to
where we
deal
can
with
make
that, but they
request.
got to get
If we
the
need a
LOI.
request now, and if we want that number in the LOI, it's going to delay it by a few
Yeah.
weeks.
So Tom and I had a discussion with Sean Story from CMHC interim Kenya a few days ago, and talked about that. And their recommendation is to proceed with the LOI, and they hope to get that approved by Friday. They're working on to get it approved by Friday, and that pretty much cements the funding. But CMHC contribution will not be more than 6 million is in contribution, but there is an opportunity to finance the other after the original LOI is in place. That's my understanding. Is that correct, Tom? Yeah.
Yes.
And then I would say we have a discussion with Michael Byrne about the bids and the impact of that, to see if the department can shake some additional money out of there. And again, with the furnishings, I still think that we can make a case to FedDev. And I would say complete the application for Corp.
So if we could find.
Corp
first
has $1 million
somewhere else.
at headquarters and 250,000 in the region. And I think part of our original budget plan was to apply for Corp, but we didn't think we needed it.
Furniture, fixtures and equipment.
Is 3.2 million?
Almost 3,150,000.
I move to accept, Chief.
So anyway, but I need some quality time to put that together with work with Tom to get that. And to have those conversations to see if that's possible.
So your motion is to.
And then the Bank of
Conditionally
Montreal still
award?
has to send some additional money, which they're committed to
Conditional
providing.
award.
As I said,
They
conditionally.
provide 25,000 a year, so that comes into the budget. We got, what, the first 2 installments so far?
From,
The Bank of Montreal.
I would say you've probably gotten one, maybe, I don't know if we've received the second one.
I think we received the second one. I think the third one is
25,000
doing,
a year.
I'll follow up with Cecil on that.
I think we've received a total of around 120,000 and all the contributions that came in.
Oh, there's more than that, Tom.
Okay.
Okay, I'll get you the list. All right, so does council wish to then approve to award the contract to Nikon Limited pending approval confirmation from Snyder Architects that they can meet the tender requirements for an amount of $64 million, approve the final budget of $75,107 with MB contributing upset limit. Then you're going to give us the number, right?
Yeah, it's 6.2 and change, I believe.
6.2?
I'll get the.
I'll put approximately
when
6.2.
we leave Here, I'll go get the number.
Then you don't have those private contributions in the list, so. Safe to say that'd be about 6 then.
Pardon?
Safe to say that'd be about $6 million then. I mean the upset limit. Chief's,
want
Chief's
six-
confident.
The
Chief's
number that
confident.
Cecil gave me that we've received today is only around 120. So
Yeah.
is there a chance that we?
I
can
thought
get
it was 170 the other day, you said it had been received.
So I was saying, we don't have that 200,000, but could we get there by the time this project is done?
But
Yeah,
Cecil she has a ledger account and she has a trust account. There's 2 accounts.
So I'm good with
So some of it's in the ledger account and the others in the trust account. I wish they would have just put it all in the trust account.
Counting's all black box magic to me, Chief.
Okay, I'll talk to Cecil. Okay.
I'm good with
Debit's on the left, credit's on the right.
Okay.
That's all.
seconding the
Who's moving
Chris moved the
Chris.
conditionally approve.
and who's seconding?
That'd be me.
Josh? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion's carried. And you're going to put that exact number? I put approximately 262.
I'll, as I get back to my desk, I'll get that number and I'll email it, Shelley.
Okay, the
And hopefully
motion's
by
carried.
Friday, we'll have the majority of the information back to us. I'm really crossing my fingers that Nikon's gonna get that increase to their bonding. Otherwise, we're looking at the second bidder.
Okay. The other thing our department needs to do is work with the federal government with this bonding requirement to see, and maybe even with AFN insurance, is there any way that they could help the local contractors meet the bid bond requirements? We need to do some progressive work in economic development to help our local businesses meet those requirements.
And the discussion with council is how much risk does council want to undertake? If we don't want to proceed with bonding, we don't have to.
Yeah.
Those are risk mitigation.
I tabled that the last meeting, I believe, or a couple meetings ago.
But we need at some point, I'm just flagging it to say
And
that's something we should
have
work on.
bonding establishing a limit on it. So the
A
round number
threshold.
that I'm using currently is $1 million. But if we want to lower that, increase that, does council want to put a formal motion on the books that says that we will accept alternative forms of security, what those forms are? And then we can either build that into the tenders, or we just don't do project security and we take the chance that they get done. We've been fortunate. I'm not aware of council or MBQ having a project that has failed to perform, but there is that risk, especially when you start talking these bigger projects. Definitely something like the LTC, you're not going to proceed. Your funders won't even allow you to proceed without the 50/50.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. I guess the other part is in camera. So we'll probably have to bring you back for that part.
I'm here all day.
Thanks, Tom.
So the critical incident report is the next item on the agenda. And see, I don't seem to have that critical incident report document here.
It was an add-on
Like
that
election
I
date.
believe Chris had added on.
Oh, here it is, here it
So
is, here.
we have an agenda item sheet.
Okay, so Chris, this is your item. Go ahead.
Which one, chief?
Critical incident report, previous tabletop exercises.
Yeah, yeah. So in light of hundreds and hundreds of forest fires, flooding, heat, et cetera, catastrophes are happening everywhere. That being said, I think about a year ago, we had an action item to get a report on what happened with our response to the fire when we lost the hangar.
Okay, so then what is your motion then, Chris?
I'm still waiting for the report. It might be a year ago. When was the fire? Was that a year and a half ago? Or was it this past winter?
It was on the 26th of February, 2022. You're talking about the airport fire?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So subsequent to that, I brought it to the council table to say, typically when there's an incident of that magnitude, there's usually a report. What went well, what didn't went well, how can we improve upon things? And again, in light of what's going on with train derailments and everything else, it just seems like you watch TV now and it's just crisis after crisis, a lot of it's climate change, but we got to be prepared. And I haven't seen the report, chief.
Okay. David, do you know, is anyone working on, or Angela, is anyone working on the report that Chris had requested?
Gonna answer. I was gonna say, I know it was asked for, but at the time, I believe Scott was moving into the new fire hall and trying to get the
Okay.
building, between buildings and stuff. He was going to look for the tabletop stuff, but I hadn't. I don't know
David,
which
do you have any information on Chris's request?
No, I'm in the same position.
Okay, let's give Scott a call then to see what he knows about it.
Can we just ask him after?
I feel like Scott had sent an email on the topic way back when, but I'll leave it to you to discuss it with him, chief, once you get him on the phone.
Yeah, I don't recall.
Is Scott still the one that manages that plan?
I think they did emergency plan training. Susan was part of that. I believe so.
Who manages that plan though? Is it more than one person now? Scott and Susan. So,
Yeah, so there was a couple of requests there, chief. One is for the critical incident report, and then I'd also asked for, the last time a tabletop exercise was done, hypothetically speaking, I asked for a copy of that, and I was given a copy of our guidelines. I said, no, I don't want the guidelines.
Does
that we've
anybody
had for
have Scott's
decades.
cell
I'm looking
number?
for your last tabletop
Just
exercise.
have it in my... Angela, do you have Scott's cell number?
Why don't we have David or Angela reach out to Susan and Scott to kind of address both the tabletop, also the critical incident report from the fire.
Yeah, just have them send an email and CC us on the email going out to ensure that it's been requested. Thank you.
NHB. Okay, so we'll have it, well, that'll be an action item again. That Chris is still waiting for the critical incident and the tabletop exercise concerning the incident for the airport hangar fire on February 26, 2023. That will be due at the next council meeting.
I would hope that chief and council would all want that information, not just me.
No, I'm good with giving the direction to both David and Angela to engage with Scott and Susan to bring back the necessary or the requested information for all of council.
Okay. So that's an action item then, in the minutes. Okay, Chris, the next item you had was the election date.
Yes. Could we set a date for the election and?
It's customary to have the election usually the first week of December, the first Saturday in December. So that date is December the 2nd, or the alternative date is the 9th. What is the direction of council? Do you want to stick to the tradition of having it the first Saturday in December? If so, we just need a motion.
I'll move.
It's been moved by Chris that the next election for the Mohawks of Bay of Quinte will be December the 2nd at Quinte Mohawk School between the hours of, 9 and 7? 9 a.m. to 7 p.m.? Is there a seconder for that motion?
Just housekeeping. I'm good with tentatively scheduling for them. I don't know if there's anything going. Usually there's not, right? Usually it's customary.
Yeah.
But just to confirm.
Well, yeah, subject to the availability of the school. It usually is available. They usually make space for that. Subject to the availability of the gymnasium at Quinte Mohawk School. Is that part of your motion, Chris?
Yeah, and then the second part is we can set some dates.
Okay, we
For
need a
canvas
seconder for
form?
that. So it's
Oh,
seconded
sorry.
by Josh. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? That'll be an MCR. Okay, that motion is carried. Okay. Yeah. The candidates night, it's usually they canvass the people ahead of time once they're nominated to see what night they're available. So the electoral officer usually does that. No, they don't do that. Who does it? So who internally?
You guys. You guys. You pick the dates.
So if it's okay with council, I'm just want to
Well,
plan.
we usually they have. I've received a phone call for somebody said, "Would you be good on this day or this day to?"
But you guys usually pick the date. It's
Yeah.
usually is it not usually in the MCR? Or no, not the candidates night. There's usually a separate motion.
Yeah, for candidates night.
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess I'm suggesting and put up for a discussion with council is as opposed to candidates night, candidates nights. So that you have one format for one forum and then a subsequent candidates meeting with maybe a little bit of a different twist to it. Whether or not.
Well,
Council.
usually what they do, it's people come and they share their vision of the community and what they'd like to work on. It's not like to run other people down.
No,
We don't
no,
have
I'm
that.
just
It's
saying
what's your vision and what's your work
Candidates
plan.
forums, yes, yeah. But sometimes, we've
What-
had.
what are your
I think
priorities?
We've had a very, very rigid structured format, I think, for a long time.
Yeah.
But if you look at some of the other ways of doing it, you get to have your 2 or 3 minutes to make a statement, but you also get a chance to say, okay, I want to ask this candidate their position on that. And then you get just to change the format and
Yeah.
also a candidates night, well, then people get a chance to digest the information, come back a week or two later and say, you said this and said that, but what about this? As opposed to only one kick at the can,
Yeah.
limited questions.
Well,
Two forums, give people-
usually they hire an independent moderator to field the questions and put the rules in place. They're usually announced, ahead of time what those rules are and how many minutes candidates will have to respond.
Yeah.
And so that's usually all done by the person that's chairing that meeting.
Yeah, and it's very like this, as opposed to maybe put out to the community. How would you like to see the two candidates form, maybe three candidates forums? How would the community like to see it formatted, as opposed to this narrow approach where one person decides the approach? Because I've heard people in the past say, you know what, with all due respect to that person they're moderating, this is our community, and who are you to kind of, on one hand, you want to keep it focused and all of the map, at the same time, not too rigid.
Yeah, I think there is obviously there's a need. We all probably agree that there's a need for a moderator to kind of facilitate or keep the flow of the meeting or the evening going well. I do agree, and I share the same sentiment that in the past it would be nice to have been given an opportunity to maybe not have to rush through who you are. I think a lot of people know who everyone is, but I think sometimes people feel the heat to try to say as much as they can, and then they might not say much of anything because they just touch on this. So an actual opportunity to kind of have the floor for up to say 10 minutes as your introductory to say, hey, here's why I'm here. Here's kind of who I am. Here's what I've been up to. Here's what I believe in. Here's what I think. And then have everybody have a chance to be introduced, because depending on how many candidates there are, that can be a good chunk of an evening. And then perhaps a second meeting or a subsequent meeting to have people, as Chris said, maybe digest what somebody's saying, or maybe something that you said, Ted, really caught my eye, and I do want to have a chance to look at it and then propose a informed question to you to get your maybe.
So it's really up to the person that's asking the question to ask just who they want to answer, or if they want all the candidates to answer. It's really up to the person asking the question. It's their night to ask the candidates.
That's the problem with one night, Chief.
Yeah.
6 candidates.
So you want several nights.
You might spend 6 candidates in 15, 20 minutes, or 10 minutes, whatever, all of a sudden, the night's over. No, I think it wouldn't hurt to have a couple forums, change the format.
Okay. So you want a couple of nights, and
I would suggest a
Yeah,
couple
I would say
nights.
at least 2,
okay.
minimum of 2, spaced out. We won't want to do it back to back. We need some time to reflect, and I think community members do as well.
I think when it gets time, and that's where, like you said, there are the moderator does have a job to do, and everybody is somewhat limited in both in their questions and in their responses, because you've had elections where there's over 15 councillor candidates and half a dozen or four or five chief candidates. So there's 20 people up there, and you've only got 3 hours or maybe 3.5 if they push it, for everybody to say, hey, here's who I am, and then you got 60 seconds for your parting shot, and in the midst it maybe nobody has time to ask more than not enough questions for candidates, right? Maybe there's 20 people up there and there's only time for 8 questions. So I liked it in the past when it was talked about to maybe separate the two, give people a chance to kind of speak on their platforms, what their priorities are, and then there's an opportunity to have a public discussion that maybe somebody has a question, kind of stick it in their craw, or maybe somebody hears something that they didn't know about, some initiative, and they want to hear more information as to why this candidate is passionate about it. So I'm in favor of multiple evenings.
Okay. So then I guess what evenings do you want to nail that down now? Because normally we do consult the candidates to find out when they're available.
That I would hold off on the dates.
Yeah.
But I do agree that maybe having a choice of 3 when we do have the candidates and the what's the term, officer, because they need to be available,
Officer and the moderator.
and the moderator.
What you should think about is who the moderator, who's available. Start looking for that person now.
But I'm good with the date and then that direction of structure moving forward. I think it's a good opportunity.
Okay, so that could be further discussion then, but put your I guess I'd think about getting a moderator now.
You need an electoral officer too. Need to
Yeah,
get
we
that
need
done. Is
electoral
that gonna be
officer.
open? Shelley mentioned something about that. He's working on that.
So we should really post for the electoral officer.
Yeah, and on the topic of moderator, maybe we would have to agree prior to asking for a moderator, is he or she moderating 2 functions, 3 sessions? Otherwise, how would you bid as a moderator?
Yeah.
Am I 2 nights, 3 nights?
Well,
So,
not
but-
everybody's going to be available every night of the week. That's just not going to happen.
No, and I don't think committee wants to hear us every night of the week,
Yeah,
but you know, if we agree on 2 or 3 forums, then you can tell the moderator.
And a lot of people will just come out and say, I've heard it once, I don't want to go back again.
Well, I think if we were to do 2, that gives the people a chance the candidates a chance to speak and not be, like, you can't talk for half an hour, right? There are limitations. But, and then the second meeting, maybe, like you said, maybe people have heard what they need to hear and maybe they don't have any questions for us and it's quiet night, or for the candidates. But I think 2 would be good if you wanted to go that route.
Yeah, break it up in terms
Maybe you
of.
try it out and it's like, oh, geez, we could have used 3. Well, you know that for the next time. But I think 2 would be a good step in the direction.
Yeah,
my
having the
thought.
first night, I think,
Waste of money,
for
right?
introductions and, just introducing yourself and, like you said, your platform, and then the second evening or whatever day it is to have those questions come forward from the community. Yeah, depending on the number of candidates, but yeah, there's never enough time, I think, for folks, and everyone's rushing to get through.
So if you need a motion for 2 for the.
Okay, well, we'll hold 2 nights, all candidates night meeting
Yeah,
prior to the election after, and that'll be consultation with the people running
for planning purposes.
for planning
We'll say
purposes.
2 for planning purposes.
So you want a motion then, Chief?
Yes, we should have a
I'll
motion.
move.
We'll second it.
Yeah, no,
Josh, anybody opposed? Motion's carried.
You say my
Now,
bad.
we should be posting the electoral officer position.
They're working on that.
Yeah, they're working.
they're working on it?
Yeah, Shelley had mentioned in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so it'll be on the next agenda then, Shelley?
So
Okay,
Shelley,
thank you.
what would be the date for the what do you call it?
Nomination.
Nomination then? It's that 30 days before December 2nd. You might better post that as well.
Okay. Okay, so with
The
the
first week
mover
in
and
October?
with
That'd
the
be
mover
too
and
much.
seconders permission, can we put the nomination dates in that same motion?
Sure.
Is anyone opposed to that? We should,
Say that again, sir.
the nomination date, the election date, or would you want a separate motion for the nomination date?
Whatever.
Let's have a separate motion, nomination to post the
I
nomination.
would
date.
say the 21st, because you said it's 30 days before the election.
It's 30.
Let them check it out to be sure we get
Oh,
it right.
okay.
Just to be sure.
Minimum, at least
There,
30 days.
gotcha.
It's usually standard, the MCR usually appoints who our person is and sets the election and nomination dates, correct?
Oh.
No?
Mhm.
Of who it is, because that has to go to ISC.
So I would say the 14th to the 21st. They're both more than 30 days apart.
When is Thanksgiving? It's usually after Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Usually the second week of October is
It's
Thanksgiving.
45 days, I was just told.
Oh, it's 45
See,
now.
when is Thanksgiving?
The 9th is Thanksgiving.
The 9th?
Okay, I got it twice, it's 45 days.
So the
Okay,
14th. then?
45 days.
Thank
Will
you,
that
Pat.
land
How many
on?
days, Angela?
45, I was just told.
So October the 14th would be the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I think.
So I think we'd have to have it on the 14th, would allow enough time, wouldn't it? But that's Thanksgiving weekend.
That's probably why you had it December 9th before then. They bump everything up a week.
So there's 30 days in
Into
November, and then 2 days, that's 32 days. We'd have to have it the 7th of October. Is that good for the council? That's plenty of time.
What's the date, sir?
October 7th.
Yeah,
It-
it's fine with
Is
me.
it good for the community? Is it within the scope of?
I think the 14th.
Of the timing, of the time period?
If the
Isn't,
14th,
isn't that is that Thanksgiving weekend though?
I don't think it is. I think
Oh.
thanks.
Oh, no, the 14th, it should be the 9th. I'd say the 14th works.
Yeah, sounds good. The
Mhm.
14th and the
Yeah,
2nd.
Thanksgiving is.
That meets your 45-day threshold.
It
That
does.
it's after Thanksgiving.
So October 14th.
16. Isn't that only 36 days? There's 30 days in November. And
And half
that's
the month of October.
2 weeks from the 14th till that's 14 days. That's
It's probably
40.
46 days.
That's 14. You're right. It does makes 46 days. The 14th of October works. Is that the date then? If so, can we have a mover? 14th of October will be nomination date.
Yeah,
Is there
I'll move.
a move by Ted? Is there a seconder?
Be all part? Okay, that's fine too.
14th of October will all be part of the
Is
original
the mover
motion.
and
That's
seconder
fine.
okay with that then?
Yeah.
Being part of the same? All right.
14th of October will
Then
be
I'm okay.
nomination date. Okay, thank you. Now, are those your issues then, Chris? We
The
deal-
third one, but that third one was in camera.
Yeah, that will be in camera, right. So I've asked for to put on here Victor Lynn came over yesterday and this should be really in camera as well.
Probably. Yes.
The Bank of Montreal edition letter. Okay, should that be in camera then?
Which one you talking about, chief? What item?
The Bank of Montreal letter.
Well, it doesn't have to be in camera. That's just.
It's just the letter, has that been completed and circulated to the council, the wording of that letter?
To add that statement that you were asking about, yeah, I emailed that earlier.
Okay, and is
You
that
probably
said,
didn't see it because
has the council seen it and reviewed it?
I don't know if they.
I have not had an
been
opportunity to
sitting
review it. We
Okay.
received it just before 10
Can you
a.m.
just read the change then, Angela, to the letter, to the council, please?
Well, they want the opportunity to look at it, so we can always look at it later.
When did you send it?
10 o'clock this morning. I said that this morning when I,
Was sent at 5 this morning? Okay.
oh God, no, I wasn't even awake at
Is
5.
it in the
Just
drive?
before 10 a.m.
I didn't put it in the drive. I
okay.
can put it in the drive, but I didn't email it. I can stick it in the drive if you'd like.
Oh, that's fine. I can get it by email too, if that's the case.
Just have to find it in my email.
There, Angela, I just can't seem to find it here. You sent it at 5, you said?
9:56, Chief.
Okay, I got it here.
I wasn't awake at 5.
It says, please see the BMO letter with some proposal wording requested by council on July the 5th. This letter is from MBQ to BMO about MBQ's conditional support, saying that the application meets MBQ's internal pre-qualification requirements. The applicant has not been approved for a mortgage yet, and they do not see the letter. This is an internal comment saying we can guarantee a mortgage if the applicant meets the bank's requirements. If the intent is to ensure the applicant is aware of the requirement outlined in the application, MBQ policies, laws and bylaws, regulations, and MBQ follows, then we propose a statement be added to the application form that the applicant would be required to separately sign off on saying they have received, read, and understand that they are compliant with these requirements. These documents will be provided when someone comes in for an application to apply for the BMO mortgage. This puts the onus on the applicant as they will be signing off saying they have read and understand what is necessary. As part of getting a mortgage, we also have a signed document on file showing that they agreed to follow these requirements. The proposed address is new request coming, however, we can draft a statement for the two members mortgage is currently on hold pending the decision if you want. And the change is in blue. The applicant will be required to follow all MBQ policies as applicable. This includes, but is not limited to, the First Nations Market Housing Fund policy and the new construction policy to ensure compliance to milestones, inspections, minimum property size and setbacks, and other important requirements to the construction process. In addition, all construction shall follow the latest edition of the National Building Code. Does that satisfy your request?
As long as it requires all MBQ policies, bylaws, et cetera, because it confuses people when we say, okay, you applied to the Mohawk Bay Equity revolving loan program, you're approved this and that. Then you're approved through BMO, well, BMO Market Housing Fund. Doesn't matter who the funder is, you gotta meet this stuff. And as I said, I had a family member last week, I'm going through BMO. That's rigid. Oh, no, they're all rigid. Policies and bylaws apply to everybody, regardless of the funding. But we have had we've changed the format of the approval letter for BMO, which is backstopped by Market Housing Fund. But somehow that letter got changed over the years to miss some of these critical items.
So then I guess,
appears.
do you want this here?
I'll just read it, Chief, when I get home. It sounds like it captures everything.
But again, this is
Okay,
an internal document that's from MBQ to BMO, and the applicant doesn't even see this.
Yeah, you
This
do.
is only,
No, you do see it because the person, when we had the issue, said, look, Chris, look at this letter I got.
Okay, what is,
Yeah, between BMO and then MBQ, but at the
So
end
I
of the
think
day, it left out some of the requirements.
I think what happened during COVID time, what the pre-COVID, my understanding was that the housing staff would meet with all of the people who applied for a mortgage and were approved, and it was mandatory to attend that meeting. Then they would go over with them in person all of the things that they had to comply with to apply for the mortgage. But I don't think those meetings occurred after COVID struck, so therefore things sort of went by the wayside in terms of, so there may have been a lack of communication that was because of the COVID condition. I'm not sure.
that's when.
Yeah.
that's when
But I
they
think
get
that,
an
I
MBQ
think that's,
mortgage.
I think that's probably what happened.
I think
Yeah.
that's when they get an MBQ
And
mortgage.
I don't know if it's safe for you
And
to.
I believe that the housing department were already getting people to sign off saying that they had received all of the package of information.
Yeah.
Again, I say that.
What is lacking is somebody needs to go out before, when they put footings in the ground, to make sure that the setback limits meet the policy, then sign off. There needs to be a pre-inspection before the building's, up and everybody's complaining about it after it's built. Catch it before it's built. Stake it out, have them stake out where the footings are going to be. Does that meet the setbacks? Maybe that's something that Todd and Nick can work out if there was communication between the departments.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's correct, Chief, that prior to COVID, those mandatory workshops were happening. I think many years ago they ceased that practice.
No, I can recall people coming in here, and they were here for that reason. Not very
How long ago, though?
A few years ago, pre-COVID. Wasn't
10,
that long.
15?
I don't think, well, let's ask Tom. Let's not guess at it.
Yeah.
Ask Tom to come in. He's available. It's
Still not
11 point.
saying, no, if the intent is to make sure that the applicant is aware of all this stuff, then what we propose with the package that they get, we actually then have them acknowledge, like signing off that they have received, read, and understand these requirements. It's in the application before they even go start the process, period.
Yeah, but the Chief's onto a bigger, higher issue, whereas let's
I
not
know what he's
assume,
doing, but I'm just
let's
trying
not
to
assume,
understand
let's not assume
current-
that these workshops are taking place. If they stopped 8, 9 years ago, well, it's time to put them back into place. And so there's
Shelley's
a
confirmed
workshop.
they have.
Having excellent.
And even during COVID, I believe they did it online.
But all of this seems to have mushroomed from the fact that there's nobody checking the setbacks before people start to build anything. And that should be a requirement that they have to call the roads guys to say, does it meet the setback requirements from the road allowance?
It is a policy requirement.
No, but nobody's, you can tell them that, but who's checking it to make sure that's the way it is? You can really head off a lot of these things by looking at it beforehand, before the shovels go in the ground.
No, for sure. And I think, to be fair, I think there are some situations where folks are taking the initiative or the opportunity based on a conditional support letter to start building in advance of even receiving money, and then attempting to get that money after the fact. So there are some pieces there that sometimes aren't flowing, I think, the way that was intended to. So I think there are a number of different situations that I think that we've seen. So I think ensuring that things are clear if these workshops are happening, that's great. I think people need to understand what the expectation is up front. So hopefully this will assist in some way. Things will improve, but I think it's important to say that there are different situations, though, whereby folks are moving ahead of the process, and then looking to be compensated for that after, or reimbursed after the fact.
But I think a lot of those things could be, if that was a requirement in the community, that you need to check and get approval before you start to build with the roads department, that what you're proposing to build meets the setback requirements, and they sign a certificate and send it to housing.
At one time, the EHO was there. I know one time there would be 2 and 3 CHRs all at the same time
But
being
that's
there.
that's not the responsibility of the
building.
CHRs.
No, the EHO is there because when you do your site inspection, you say, okay, the septic's gonna go there. Back in the day when you had wells, the well would go there, the house would go there. You're supposed to have it staked out before the EHO, before the building inspector, before the housing coordinator. Everybody comes with that site and says, okay, septic there, well there, house there. EHO, you good. CHR, you good. Housing, you good. Inspector, you're good. Yeah, we're all good. Move forward.
And the roads department, that it meets the setback from the road.
Well, roads department are more concerned with culverts. Roads department isn't concerned with the setback because it's not a roads issue.
Well, they should be,
Wow.
because the road has to be widened at some point in time. They need room
Yeah.
to widen it. That's good planning.
In summary, I agree that regardless of whether your mortgage funding comes from this pot or this pot, if this is the path that the MBQ one is on, they should meet somewhere and be the same process.
Yeah,
The expectation is the same.
It should be the same process no matter where you're getting the money from.
So I supported it last meeting and I support it again. So as long as that's captured, as long as that's the policy and the process, that doesn't matter whether you get it from this bank, that bank, or MBQ, the expectations are clearly communicated and outlined. And then you sign saying, I've been made aware of what's expected of me. So.
Because some people don't know, if there's no fencing there, they don't know where the road line is. So we won't continue to have these problems recurring. I'd say that the roads department should be looking at the setback. Does it meet it or doesn't it?
Won't hurt.
Or the lands department or something, but somebody who knows where because the roads are not always the same width. Some of them are 66 feet wide, some of them are only 40 feet wide. It's all different. Okay.
So Chief, just in my thought, with respect to this, Station pointed out that some folks have proceeded with just starting to build something before they're approved. I think the only thing that you can do in this case is to make sure that the membership is aware, however you wish to do it, through newsletter, door drops, whatever the case is, that if someone decides to start building of their own accord and that they are non-compliant with the National Building Code setbacks and everything, that they won't be eligible for a mortgage period.
Yeah.
I don't know how else you could stop somebody
Okay.
from doing that.
I would have a setback bylaw for our roads department and assign that responsibility to one of the staff members to certify. So when somebody's going to build, and I've suggested before, maybe the idea of having a building permit before you start to build anything, so we don't always have these issues arising. It's looked at carefully before shovels go in the ground. With infrastructure that's already there, the setbacks are required. The drainage issues are looked at. So you're not blocking off a drainage to a ditch just to get rid of the chaos. So there's actually a plan that will work without trying to deal with the aftermath of it all.
It'll definitely work in some situations, but again, if people are self-funding or
Yeah.
sole sourcing their own projects, that won't work in that way. So there really needs to be a comprehensive sort of plan that will address all of those outlying situations, because they're not all the same.
The issue you're talking about, that goes back to the requirement for a building code bylaw and applications and permits. That captures everybody regardless of who the funding body is. So if I say, I'm a tobacco guy, I got lots of money, I build my own house, one of these.
All
And
right.
at the end of the day, things go sideways and you're still
But
on
see,
the hook.
that's the problem why
have a
we have
jurisdiction.
such a problem, making decisions, because everybody wants to go, they don't want to follow any
Oh, until
rules.
something goes sideways. And then they say, hey, you should have made me do it.
Yeah, and now because you didn't make me do it, you have to pay the bill to rectify it. That's got to stop. That's not fair.
Well, that's why the requirement for a building code, residential building code bylaw and permit has been kicked around since the late 90s. I put it back on the agenda a year ago, and I think it's that study.
But we need laws that are enforceable to be able to make these things work. That's just the only way it's going to work.
You do.
You need a justice system in place to make it enforceable.
No, you don't. Sorry.
No? Okay. Whatever. It's your opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like,
Because-
we should get an opinion on that, Chief, actually.
Like most people will do what you want, what it's expected, as long as they're told about it.
Well, as long as it makes sense too, Chief.
Yeah.
If we talk about setbacks, does it make sense everywhere? That it's 50 feet or 100 feet? I think if you're in towns, does that make a difference in the setbacks?
Now,
I think it does, because many towns, the houses are next to the street, the sidewalk. So some are subdivisions, So I think you have to have, one rule doesn't fit all, and I think you have to look at that as well.
Well, really, some of
So-
these 40-foot road allowances, I mean, there's going to be growth in the future in terms of long-term vision down the road, but could be in 20 years, a lot of houses along there. To me, it would make sense to widen those roads to the 66 feet and then have that in place so people are not building and limiting the development there, because that will limit the development that can occur.
That's why you
And
pay
there's not
for
really a
these.
lot of places to build houses.
That's why it costs you money to gather that information. That's why you pay for these feasibility
Yeah.
studies. That's the kind of information that you gather that you can make a sound decision on, instead of
Yeah.
just sitting here guessing.
Yeah.
So that's why you spend money.
A
Costs money to get
comprehensive
that
community
information.
plan would work. Okay.
Well, we're on the topic, I'm moving to get a legal opinion regarding, do we have to have our own justice system in place in order to implement bylaws?
Who's going to enforce the bylaws?
if you
We
want
don't have
them
an
enforced-
officer. Our police won't.
One at a
We
time.
already asked them.
I'll ask the chief.
Okay, well, anyway, there are discussions going on with the Department of Justice and the Attorney General about all that, Chris, and I guess, I don't know if at some point in time that either one of those crown attorneys are going to enforce the ban bylaws. It's in discussion state. They recognize the problem that there needs to be changes made so that First Nations laws can be enforced and you can have better governance. They understand that.
But in order for us to move forward and alleviate this misunderstanding or different opinions, I think we need a legal opinion on, do we need a full-fledged justice system, our own court system?
Well, then
Or
when
can
people,
we
when people
implement
say, well, I
bylaws?
don't want to do that, and because, I'm not getting the money from you, then I don't have to do that, because it's my right
Yeah.
as a First Nations member to do whatever I please.
Can I have it noted, Chief, that I would like a motion to get
Sure.
a legal opinion on, do we have to have our own court system before we can implement bylaws?
If you want them enforced, you can make bylaws, but if you want to enforce them, you need a judicial system.
You can't use existing systems out there?
No, you don't have a prosecutor appointed.
The Crown Attorney or federal or provincial Crown Attorney will not prosecute ban bylaws, so the police have nowhere to take a charge to.
Well, the police don't enforce
No, but
bylaws.
what they do is they gather information
Who
about
enforces bylaws?
where the law has been broken.
You can hire,
They take it to a Crown Attorney, then the Crown Attorney decides whether they're going to prosecute that in court or not.
yeah. So
The
you
police just
can,
gather information, they take it to somebody who makes a decision.
yeah. So many jurisdictions, they're too small to have their own bylaw enforcement, so they hire that out. So I think we should need a legal opinion, otherwise we're gonna talk about this for another
So
25 years.
you can do it by way of private prosecution, but I'm going to tell you, it costs an awful lot of money. Like an eviction for, like, let's say a tenant situation, that can run up to $10,000.
Minimum.
Well,
So if you're going to do it by private prosecution, it's going to be very darn expensive. So to me, you need a judicial system, or some arrangement with the provincial or federal crown attorney that they will prosecute banned bylaws. And so they're trying to work that out politically because of the cost.
So how about this then? So I think we're all in favor of bylaws. How about an action item or whether it's a motion to identify or secure funding for bylaw implementation, including enforcement?
There was a call for proposals for $30,000 that you could start that process. I don't know whether or not the staff applied for that or not.
And there was also money provided by AIAI
Yeah.
for building your governance capacity
Yeah.
that wasn't spent.
Yeah.
And quite a significant amount that would have gotten a head start on this, so.
So there's money out there, get it, and I guess get on with developing a plan on law enforcement.
So again, I think the council or this council is fairly unanimous in the desire for bylaws to assist with day-to-day governance in our community. There's mixed opinions on what the enforcement mechanism looks like, but I would like to maybe turn our focus to that enforcement piece. I don't know if we necessarily need I'm sure we could pass a bylaw today,
Got a binder.
but I don't think anybody here doubts that. I think we know that we have the ability to. It's how effective it is. So, if we are going to pursue a legal opinion on bylaws, I would like to hear what a acceptable enforcement mechanism or a functioning enforcement mechanism would have to, I guess, satisfy from a legal standpoint.
Well, you know, a few years ago, there were Justice of the Peace training took place here with a number of individuals. So to me, a simple court system there where there's salary for that Justice of the Peace could come and hear these offenses. And if there was arrangements made with how municipalities do it, is they have a fine and you don't pay it, then guess what? When you go to renew your driver's license, you got to pay that, or else your driver's license won't get renewed. So that's how they enforce their
Compliance, right?
That's how they enforce
Compliance.
compliance. You don't get.
So
your
no,
driver's
we've
license,
talked
you
about that
pay
when we
bill.
when
In
we
good
went
standing.
when we went to Akwesasne and talked about even possibly cost sharing, where
Yeah.
if they've got a justice of the peace that maybe we don't have enough, and I hate to say work, but maybe there's not enough matters to be dealt with,
Dealt with
beyond having them come down once a month.
Once a month, and then they deal with all of that.
And
That's what I would
what
do.
cost what cost would be associated with
So
that?
that I'd like to see some of that money from AIAI and apply for the $30,000. I think it was from Justice Canada to put that together. A model that could work to deal with the enforcement part of it. And then I think there needs to be conversations with MTO to work at the same way that municipalities. If they don't pay a band fine, then it's the same as anybody place else. Your driver's license don't get renewed. Go ahead, Stacia.
So I had offered to share some information through the work that's happening at Chiefs of Ontario and the Justice Committee. I do have that information available, so we can add that to the agenda for August 2nd, and I can share that information with you on the enforcement piece, if that would be helpful. So there's some background information. This came the first week of June, and of course that week was quite busy, and we haven't met collectively since that time, so I do have this information for you. And also too, just to note that I did meet with ministers Doug Downey, so the Attorney General, Solicitor General, as well as Minister Lametti and Mendocino on Monday to talk about the enforcement and prosecution of First Nations laws and banned bylaws. So I can provide an update on that at the next meeting in private.
Okay, thank you, Stacia. But it has been an active item of discussion with the chiefs and the ministers as well.
In here for a long
Chief,
time.
for August the 2nd, can we have the report that we requested some time ago? We had an action item for the staff to get back to us on what's required to get this in place. I haven't seen it.
Well, really what there has to be
No,
is,
but can we get that, Chief, though, please?
yes, okay, just an action item.
What specifically are you asking?
We had this discussion. I don't know about you guys, but if we talk about something and then 3 or 4 months later, we
Okay.
talk about it again. then
What
we
is it that
talk
you
about
want?
it Again.
Let's not talk about it. Let's say what it is we want.
So can we have the report that we requested, I don't know if it was a year ago, but we had the same discussion and we requested a report from the staff regarding pros and cons, how do we implement the building code bylaw? It was very
Okay.
specific, because if we talk all this and that, well, I'm not really concerned about a chicken bylaw. But everybody lives in a house, and there's
The
the
bill-
health,
compliance
the
to the
safety, and
building
liability
code
issues.
bylaw.
It's a ticking time bomb, and we are going to be left holding the bag because we are the authority having jurisdiction.
Okay.
And making excuses, well, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. That doesn't bring back somebody from the dead. Somebody dies in a fire, a house collapses, then we're going to look, pointing fingers, well, we told the staff, well, our hands are tied.
Okay, one of the weaknesses here with this whole inspection process, the inspection process was only, oh, it's this percentage completed. This percentage completed. It does not attest that it complies with the building code. None of the inspections ever have.
But if there's an infraction, he's
No,
obligated
it
to list
doesn't.
it.
We found that out in that case that was, they tried to blame the band's housing inspector. We found out all the records said, the reports were, it's this percentage completed.
But he would disclose infractions. Anybody would disclose
Yes, yeah.
infractions.
Yeah, but there never were any infractions.
And the,
And so really the inspection process the inspector does not attest that it complies with the building code. It never has.
but the inspector isn't even getting his foot in the door without having a bylaw requirement. So that incident you're talking about, Chief, a letter was sent to that person and saying, hey, free inspections, free plans evaluation. And it's like,
Okay.
So, if I may, just so I can kind of capture where we're at. So if we were to implement a bylaw system, a building, specific to building, people then know, they're made aware of, if you're building in the territory, this is kind of the what's what. Now, if somebody self-funds a build and then builds it not to code or doesn't have inspectors there, and something happens, something unfortunate happens, somebody's hurt, we'll say, would that bylaw, I don't think the bylaw changes anything in terms of the person building, the person injuring themselves, but you're saying that the liability wouldn't be there because there's established standards that people are expected to follow and have it inspected throughout, and that's known. I'm just trying to see what the difference, the bylaw, because we do have the challenge of enforcement that we can kind of set aside. But if we were to simply create it, what differences would it be from right now in terms of somebody, like I said, self-funding, and then an incident happened due to bad building practices?
yeah. Okay, so if I was independently wealthy and I'm irresponsible and like, heck with you guys, I need hydro, don't I? You're not getting hydro. You're not getting connection to services. You're not getting this. You're not getting that. But by just kind of like,
So that's the enforcement you're talking about. So unless they've proven that they've gotten inspections, you're saying that we should restrict access to
any and all services.
utilities. Yeah.
Anything. Any and all services.
Okay.
Like, we have to show we've done everything we can.
Well,
as opposed to
if
saying
you
our
ever want
hands
to,
are
if you
tied.
build a house like that and you want to sell it, any buyer may say, show me all the building inspection reports that are available.
But see, if you have a bylaw,
When these
this
houses
discussion's
were built.
redundant. The house ain't built.
Otherwise,
You
I don't
ain't-
think
you
I'd
ain't
like to
getting
buy that
started.
house.
You're not doing diddly until you satisfy the permit, which is inspections, which is your plans evaluation.
Yeah, but
So then the house
But I'm
shouldn't
telling
be
you,
built.
I'm telling you, Chris, right now there is a difference though between the kind of inspection that you want, where the inspector is going to certify compliance to the building code, as opposed to what it is now as this percentage completed.
There's two different.
There's a
inspection
difference.
report catches two different things. It catches,
So right
you're
now, what we
99%,
need
but
to
it
say,
also
what we need
says,
to do is
hey,
explore the
there's an
cost
infraction.
of implementing that kind of inspection process and what are the qualifications needed by the building inspector. I guess there are inspections from the inspector at OF and STC.
I don't-
And is that the kind of inspection that they do now? I don't think it is, but check with them and make sure that it is. So
We
there's
don't
some
get
follow-up.
inspections from OFN TSC.
On occasion, they do, the funder will request one of their inspectors to come inspect, and sometimes it's just John Oswald.
Yeah. I think, well, I need that report. So August 2nd, we'll have the report to show us what are the obstacles.
Okay, so we need to review the, just so I gotta find out who this is calling here.
Back to that letter, Ange, you mentioned something about that people don't see this paragraph. No, can I just finish? I would just ask MBMO to put that in their letter to the applicant then, that's all. That's easy, right? That's something that I would just suggest, I guess. Because they,
get a letter?
oh, I thought they did. I thought Chris said they had a letter from BMO, right?
There's correspondence between us and BMO.
Is there correspondence between
discussing, and then
BMO and the applicant?
And you're the applicant, you're part of that equation.
Do I get a letter from BMO?
Well, you get a letter saying
from here.
you're approved through BMO. We're
From-
telling BMO.
Does the letter come from here then?
Yeah, and it misses that part. It only talks the credit part. It doesn't talk about the technical part. Whereas if you went through NBQ along, it talks to the technical part because you've already met the credit requirements, otherwise you wouldn't have approved.
Okay,
That's been somehow dropped out.
so, there needs to be a planning meeting with the staff to discuss this. We can't sort this all out in a council meeting about the inspection process for housing and the qualifications and what the inspection should comply with. I agree that it would be better if the building inspector could certify that everything complies with the building code. Then there's a certainty that that house is built right. It's a good investment of your mortgage money or the mortgage loan guarantee money. But there needs to be some work done there, and I don't think it's something we can sort out at council today.
Chief, that's not what I was talking about.
What's
I was
that?
talking about this paragraph that we're sending to BMO in a letter, that
Yeah.
the people make sure that they get the same copy of that paragraph. Right? That's what you want to make sure the applicant sees
And
that.
so
That's what
Chris said he already said that he thought that it met everything.
Yeah, I'll read it when I get home.
Okay.
But
Just saying that the applicant needs to get that though, Chief. Not just BMO.
Well, can we start there, then if it needs to elaborate, send in what your elaborations are, Chris?
yeah, my whole issue was basically you capture it in one sentence, one simple sentence. All building code requirements, setback policies of MBQ have to be met.
Well, I think
Better- the better-
the biggest big thing has been the setbacks. Let's see here.
I think that's a pretty good paragraph here.
I think it's a
Like,
good
I don't-
paragraph.
I think it's fine.
But I
It
think you
captures
just
that.
need to make sure that the applicants get it, that's all, not just
Yeah.
BMO.
Milestone
not just BMO.
inspections, minimum property size and setbacks and other important requirements. And all other, can we just say, and all other requirements related to the construction process? All other MBQ requirements,
Where?
In that blue
that
paragraph.
blue paragraph.
I know, I'm just trying to think where he's talking,
That's
This
towards the bottom,
includes, but
towards
it's
the
not limited to the First Nations market housing policy,
right?
the new construction policy to ensure compliance to milestone inspections, minimum property setbacks, and all other MBQ requirements. And all other MBQ requirements related to the construction process.
All other MVQ related.
All other MBQ requirements related to the construction process. And what I would do to ensure that they're looking at the right building code, give them a copy of the most recent building code so they're not looking at the wrong one. Here is the building code that you have to comply with when you build that house. Read it. Have your contractor follow that.
Is David still with us?
Yeah, he is.
David, can you give us that report this week and then we'll have a chance to digest it in preparation for August the 2nd?
Sorry, Chief, can you
Chris asked, could we get the report so we could, by August the 2nd?
No, this week, and then we'll have a chance to digest it and be prepared for August the 2nd.
And what, this is the report on,
There was a motion or not, I think it was a motion, I don't know if it's 6 months ago or a year ago, staff report regarding implementation of a residential construction code bylaw.
Yeah.
'Cause I just said implement, I couldn't get a seconder to implement, so I went to study.
okay,
What's required?
what's required for a residential,
Just have them read the motion, chief. Have them read the motion from the minutes from.
can you
when it
call that
was.
motion up, Shelley, please? Pardon me?
What'd you say?
She can't.
She can't.
From what
She
you-
can't do it from where she's sitting right now, so we'll have to take. a
So
break.
apparently there's a motion about 6 months ago asking for a residential building code bylaw
Implementation report.
implementation report.
Because we had this discussion back and forth in jurisdiction, this and that, so they're gonna get back to us.
So
regarding
again,
it.
Chris is asking for the status of that motion. Shelley will look it up and give it to David to circulate that motion for all of us to refresh our memories. And Chris is asking, could he have it before August the 2nd or not? Or will it be best efforts?
Well, Chief, I have to actually see what the motion is to let you know. So once Shelley circulates it, we'll get a response out.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, so is there anything else then, Chris, that has to go on here? Or
Just that in camera item.
the in-camera item? Okay,
But we're still streaming.
so I guess we're ready then to, if there's nothing else, ready to move into in-camera? Is there a motion to go in camera?
Are you gonna say goodbye to everybody?
Okay, goodbye to all of our guests who are joining on the line. Do we have many? Okay, all of our guests online, thank you very much for joining our council meeting and your patience in our discussion as we try to sort out some issues. And hope that you all have a great day and a good summer. Thank you very much.